Welcome to June, all you crazy cats out there watching FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network tonight. Hi, hello, and welcome. My name is Eric Balkman. You follow me on the X at Eric Balkman. You know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the FFPC, and of course the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Being joined tonight by not one but two guests because we got live draft coverage coming up, ladies and gentlemen. You know him, you love him. He is the multi-time winner of numerous, well over a dozen, probably 20 plus at this point now, FFPC leagues. Dave Terpoilli at Dave Terp. Dave, congratulations on a very successful broadcast last night as well.
Thank you. Went very well. Andrew Cooper is a wealth of knowledge.
He is. He's the man. He is the
and
man.
He's very entertaining too. He keeps it interesting.
He if there's a yin to Cooper's yang, to borrow his yin yang tight end theory, it is Theo Gremminger, who is joining us on behalf of Fantasy Points tonight. Follow him on the X at the OG Fantasy, at Fantasy PTS on the X as well, fantasypoints.com. The host of Dynasty Life, the host of Fantasy Football Daily. Theo, what am I missing here?
School of Scott with Scott Barrett. I do that every single week now, which is a lot of fun.
Can't keep track anymore.
Yeah, I'm all over the place, man. This is like the week where I had a bunch of stuff scheduled, so I've kind of like bit off a little bit more than I could chew, but I'm so glad that we're doing this. A lot of times it's Dave and I drafting together, but Dave is just there to tell me when I made like a good pick or a bad pick. So
fun.
Yeah, I'm sure Dave and I'll split a team before the end of the summer, but love coming in here. Love chopping it up with you guys. Like I play a ton of FFPC. A lot of people know me for my content, but I take a lot of pride in my FFPC wins, and I won a bunch of them last year. So
Theo, just as an aside, and I don't even know the answer to this, because you're so busy with Fantasy Points and the podcast and all the content you're generating there. I know you draft a ton across the board. Do you have like a normal day job, or is this
no? This is it. It's Fantasy Points, and that's all I'm doing. I still am doing some stuff like during the season. I'll write a weekly article with The Athletic, so that's sort of like a gig. But the job is Fantasy Points, and then this time of year, it's drafting is like the second job, and I feel like it's hard to say no to some of these drafts, and I jumped into a $750 RotoViz Triflex league. I'm doing a slow 350 Big Gorilla, and then I'm hopping in this one tonight. So it's just constant, but it's awesome. And this time of year, I think you can find an edge. A couple guys that I think will rise up in ADP. Hopefully, I get some access to them. And Terp, sometimes you just run pure and you draft a couple guys that stay healthy. Somebody else drafts some guy who gets banged up. You get a little bit of an edge there. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy June drafting. I know some people don't come out and really hit it until like the 4th of July. I've tried to like backtrack any main event exposure until around 4th of July for myself, but I'm hitting some of the 350s and of course the best ball. And then I'm over on Underdog a ton, sort of constantly slow drafting on Underdog as well.
You love a good slow draft, man. I
love slow drafts.
It was last week. All them, that gives me anxiety.
I like slow drafts in FFPC
slow
too.
Drafts, man. No, thank you.
I'm in the 2. I did a 2 hour for the Big Gorilla, and even the 2 hour Terp, like it's not conducive to like. I feel like you got to go live or you got to just take the 6 hours. Like
I would agree there. We've done a bunch of 2 hours together, and it's just like. You're always on the clock, the awkward time.
And we're East Coast guys. We're East Coast guys. We're in New York.
It's never as easy as it comes out to be.
Like East Coast guys have it a lot harder than like people we know who draft from Texas or California. Those guys get a little extra edge. Like, shout out to Dave Hubbard and a B-Bag Batoba. You guys got it easy. You guys are in Texas. We're like falling asleep trying to make sure we don't time out. And sometimes when you're towards the turn, Terp, like if you're in like the 10 hole, you are relying on teams 11 and teams 12s not to make like back-to-back, like quick picks. And then you can get left holding the bag and you can time out. So I don't know. I like the 6 hours. And then the slow Underdog drafts. I think it's like a way of life. It's like a lifestyle this time of year. So I like it.
It's a good time to do it if you're going to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Pat Kerrane I think it was Pat Kerrane was talking about this. I can't remember with who, or maybe it was JJ Zacharyson, or maybe the two of them were talking together. I can't remember, but one of them made the point, Theo, like sometimes when you're drafting a bunch of slows at once, do you kind of like, I don't want to say zone out, but do you kind of forget about your team construction, about like oh, I should have stacked this guy instead of taking this running back because I wasn't paying attention to what league was which. Do you ever run into those issues at all? Do you ever battle those demons?
Yeah, I mean, I think that on Underdog you have like a lot of time to go about taking a look at the board. Even like the clock is so long. I try to not miss on stuff like that, but you sometimes miss on it. But sometimes missing on trying to stack and instead you made the very correct pick ends up working out well for you, Balky. So I don't know. I don't really worry about it that much. I have been trying to be like cognizant about some of my structural builds on Underdog this year. I think like I've been trying to build a lot more like 3 quarterback builds. I think like for a while I was trying to do as many like 2 quarterback builds, be a little bit more fragile at quarterback and dive into like an additional running back or wide receiver. But I feel like it's optimal strategy to dive into that 3rd quarterback this year. So I've been trying to do that a little bit more. I think I'm more concerned about structure and team build than necessarily trying to cram in like that week 17 game stack,
Quarterback is also really deep this year, so you can get away with deep. That,
Yeah. And there's
so many guys that are down there that are easily stacked cheap, and you can get them with their guys, that you're taking early and have no issues. It's not like, there's so many deep stacks with like the Patriots and teams like that you could, do, Drake May, mix in Hunter Henry if you wanted to do it, or Kyle Williams, or even Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways you can do it to where it's not just like, all right, or if you take Joe Burrow, you either get Higgins or Chase. And if you don't get him, you don't take Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I like a lot of those back end QB2s have a lot of like juice this year. Yep. And I like Geno. I've been like Geno as a QB3. I've liked a ton, but I'm a little distracted by this. Balky, you haven't watched The Sopranos, so I just saw in the chat. Shout out to the chat. They're busting your chops.
Yeah.
How could you not have watched The Sopranos?
All right.
Greatest show of all time.
So just real quick on this, I have I was a double major in college. One was journalism, one was radio, TV, film. So we spent a lot of time watching a lot of stuff, a lot of films, a lot of television shows in college. And one of the things we watched was the pilot episode of The Sopranos, and I thought I was very intrigued by it. Brilliantly shot, loved the writing, loved the acting. There's a lot to love about it. I loved it so much I have not watched an episode since. And it's not like I don't like it. I'm not anti-Sopranos. It is on my list.
That's a fair take.
I need to I have this new show back in Northeast Wisconsin, sort of like a pop culture movies television show. And we kind of break down different things every week. And Ballerina, are you guys familiar with Ballerina, the movie that's coming out this week?
Heard of it, yeah.
Armas and Keanu Reeves. It's part of the John Wick series. I've never seen any John Wicks. So he's like, my co-host, like, I want to talk about Ballerina. You need to watch all the John Wicks to catch up. So John Wick, Sopranos, it's on there. It's awful that I haven't.
You can watch Sopranos way before you even. I've never watched John Wick, but I mean,
I've watched John Wick, but like I'm not like a.
I can tell you
fan.
I can tell you every Sopranos episode, and I'll say, Balky, like, not to get too Sopranos conversation, but the pilot was very good and gets you hooked in. But it's probably a bottom 5 episode of The Sopranos,
really?
To be honest. Yeah.
Wow.
Like
I didn't know
it has. There was a lot to like about it, but they took a long hiatus between filming like the rest of the series. So they had a chance to clean it up. They recast a bunch of Father Antontola was a different actor come back. A couple other smaller characters got recast. So yeah, you got to do it, Balky.
Yeah,
I'm actually shocked by this.
I know
that someone your age hasn't watched The Sopranos.
Pull an all-nighter and just start watching it. Right. You'll get hooked.
One of my buddies slash listeners of my local radio show also. He goes to the Dominican or not the Dominican, the Caribbean. He brings me back spices and different things down there, which I really like. He said, I'm cutting you off until you watch at least the first 4 seasons of Dexter. So I have to get Dexter on my list as well.
Great show.
I heard the first 4 seasons awesome. After that, I don't know.
It fades off a little bit.
It fades off, yeah. So okay, I don't know we got on this subject here, but let's do this here. We're going to be covering in about 20 minutes the start of Theo Gremminger's FFPC Best Ball Tournament draft. He's going to be drafting for $300,000 against 11 other owners who are going to be gunning for that $300K grand prize, $125 to enter. You can do that at myffpc.com. You can't compete against Theo in this draft tonight, but you can compete against him indirectly when you join a draft in this tournament. There's also a Superflex best ball tournament as well that has a $100,000 grand prize, a $35 entry, a $100,000 prize will go to the runner-up of the best ball tournament this year as well. So you can win six figures even if you don't win the whole thing. 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks for the FFPC best ball tournament tonight. Theo, you have the second pick. I'm going to get your thoughts on what your plans are there, not necessarily with the 102, but maybe what you're hoping for the 211 and the 302. But we do have semi-breaking news tonight about Aaron Rodgers. Tom Pelissero has reported from the NFL Network that Rodgers has informed the Steelers that tomorrow he'll be flying to Pittsburgh and he will sign with the team before next week's minicamp. Pelissero reported that the contract parameters have been in place for several months, and Rodgers has publicly said he'd play for $20 million. What a nice guy. So at this point, this guy is going to turn 42 years old in, I think, December of this year. And he's expected to be on the field when the Steelers start minicamp coming up on Tuesday. Arthur Smith has a run-heavy scheme. We know how much he likes using the running backs and backup tight ends, if Atlanta was any guide as well. But Theo, we don't have to talk about this theoretically anymore. I guess we're going to talk about it theoretically with you, but we don't have to talk about this in a vacuum. This is real. It's real life. Aaron Rodgers is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Is this moving the needle for you with anybody? Jaylen Warren, DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, or Aaron Rodgers himself at this point?
Well, certainly if you were in on DK Metcalf, you're going to be more in on DK Metcalf. I mean, the lack of wide receiver target competition for him, there's no one there that I think is going to get attention from Aaron Rodgers unless they make a trade. Guys like Calvin Austin, guys like Roman Wilson, those are sort of projection type players. Whereas DK Metcalf, I think, could have his best year, at least in terms of like usage, in several years. I mean, this is a guy who I think could have a massive target share, a ton of air yard share, get a lot of first read looks. They were really, really play action happy last year. And I think that's what they're going to be this year to take advantage of DK. So DK's in a fantastic spot. They didn't pay him that contract to not heavily utilize him. And the whole argument that Arthur Smith doesn't hyper target wide receivers, it's a valid one. Didn't hyper target AJ Brown, Drake London, George Pickens, never had a guy cross 125 targets in a season. I could see DK Metcalf challenging that this year, especially with Rodgers there. Rodgers is going to pass to who he wants to. It's also like this. It's a very weird to see Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers sort of like kind of opposite extreme example type big personalities. One guy sort of does his thing. The other does his thing. But when like the rubber meets the road, Aaron Rodgers is the one with the football in his hands, and he's going to be the one audibling at the line of scrimmage. So I think DK is in really, really good shape. And what's interesting is a lot of our ADP gets influenced by the underdog effect. Drafters come in, they set ADP, they chase the game week stacks, they chase the quarterback correlation. So what's interesting to me is FFPC main event drafters have been pushing DK Metcalf up considerably higher than best ball drafters had. So I think you're going to see DK Metcalf's ADP more in line with where main event drafters are drafting, because now they actually have some clarity who the quarterback is. And like Rodgers is kind of cooked, but he's not as cooked as what we could have had. We could have had like a Mason Rudolph situation, which would have been awful for DK Metcalf. At least Rodgers can be about as functional as Russell Wilson was last year. And Rodgers had some big games down the stretch last year. He still got a little bit of juice to him. What I think is interesting is it makes me a little bit less in on Caleb Johnson, because the argument for Caleb Johnson was a ton of volume, all the opportunities inside the red zone, be a stud on the goal line, and sort of be an elevated talent versus what Najee Harris was. Now you're going to have a few situations where Aaron Rodgers, he loves to throw around the goal line. We saw that time and time again with Devontae Adams. So like a little bit of the argument for Caleb Johnson sort of goes out the window. I'm not out on him, Terp, but I'm just not as like enthusiastic that the offense could end up being revolving around Caleb Johnson in like the second half of the year to like cover up a bad quarterback situation. I think they're going to go for it with Rodgers this year. So if anything, it's DK Metcalf. You feel a little bit better about him. Caleb Johnson, maybe you can take him at value, but no need to sort of reach on him. And then Freiermuth, I think I'm sort of neutral. I still worry a little bit that the Jonnu Smith trade could go down. Seems like there's some interest, especially from Jonnu's camp, to end up in Pittsburgh so he can get paid. And you wonder if the Aaron Rodgers ending up there sort of has a gravitational pull, and there's going to be like a secondary move where maybe a guy like Jonnu ends up, something like that. So I've been on DK, and it's sort of like I argue with a lot of podcasters about this. I've argued with Scott Barrett about this, but I said, before the Rodgers signing that I think DK can average 15 points per game this year. I think that's a reasonable bet. And there's been a really interesting trend where traded wide receiver finishes as a wide receiver 1. Last year, Jerry Jeudy, DJ Moore the year before, and then just a list of studs like AJ Brown and Tyreek Hill who did it for years before, back all the way to Diggs. But it's every year. It's a traded wide receiver becomes a wide receiver 1. Never say never.
I think that the other thing, and Terp, I don't know if you have strong feelings about this. I think Theo does. Are we making too much of, or will we be making too much of the number 2 wide receiver in Pittsburgh now that Rodgers is there? Number 2 wide receivers haven't been all that great in Arthur Smith offenses. And I think that there's now 3 camps, right? Are you team Calvin Austin? Are you team Roman Wilson? Or are you team I'm out on the Pittsburgh secondary wide receiver here? How do you feel about it now that Rodgers is going to be inked here shortly?
I'm definitely team out on the
I'm out.
Without a doubt. I mean, I could see Keenan Allen. I could see Amari Cooper being brought in here, a veteran type of situation. I hope we don't see another Allen Lazard trade to get this disaster. Really, I'm pretty much out on the Steelers overall. I mean, I like DK. He's the only guy I will take. I do pretty much agree with mostly everything that Theo said. Freiermuth, I like the talent, but I mean, the Johnny Smith thing just worries me. And if he goes there, they're both just pretty much drawn dead, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and if they pay Jonnu, I don't like either of them.
Yeah, and not to interrupt you, Terp, but I was going to say Muth is the kind of player that if you just want to see how this Jonnu Smith thing plays out, and you don't draft either one of them for the next 4 weeks, it's not going to burn you. You're not going to miss out on this Muth at 80. Muth structurally makes sense, and there is a little bit of history where tight ends succeeded with Arthur Smith, and Muth was good down the stretch last year.
He was.
But again, if Jonnu ends up there, they both take such a huge step back from what they currently are at ADP. So I would just want to avoid that situation. You're not really getting a value on Jonnu Smith, who's still steamed up right now. And then Muth is sort of being drafted like he's the number 2 target in a low volume passing offense anyway. So I kind of will let both those guys, let somebody else draft them, take other shots at the tight end position. But DK Metcalf, to me, I think he's really interesting. There's some interesting players going around him, but I think early main event drafters, you get some really, really sharp guys in those rooms, and they're telling you that DK's too cheap on underdog, too cheap in the FFPC best balls.
Guys, let's shift the conversation here to Denver. And I think one of the more compelling situations is, and it has been even prior to the draft, is the Denver Broncos running back situation. The latest caveat, I think the latest domino to fall was RJ Harvey going maybe higher than some people expected in the NFL draft. But now we find out from Tom Pelissero a couple of days ago that Denver has hosted free agent J.K. Dobbins for a visit there too. Now the Chargers have the UFA tender on him, so he has until training camp to negotiate with other teams. If Dobbins doesn't sign a deal elsewhere, then the Chargers keep his rights. The Broncos running back room outside of RJ Harvey, kind of scattershot. You have Jaleel McLaughlin, you have Audric Estime. I know Theo, there are people out there saying that, hey, we're warning you about Estime right now. They're going to use him more than I think a lot of people project. But this visit for Dobbins, we know RJ Harvey continues to move up draft boards in the FFPC. Does this change anything for you at all, knowing that Denver is bringing outside help in, at least to get a look at J.K. Dobbins, a guy who was pretty good when he was healthy last year?
I mean, I think that the argument with Harvey is that his ADP has steamed up really, really high, rather than let's fade him because a veteran running back is signed in June. I think that if J.K. Dobbins is brought in, and some people pushed back on me really hard on this one, Terp, but I said yesterday on X that I think it's more reflective to they don't really trust Jaleel McLaughlin. Audric Estime. And those two guys were in the building last year. We sort of saw what they were. McLaughlin, now we've seen him for 2 years. He's a guy that Sean Payton liked. He was an undrafted free agent. Estime was like a 5th-round pick. And Denver very much views themselves as a contender this year. They have one of the better defenses in football. They have a very, very good offensive line. They acquire Evan Engram, and they have a really, really strong second-year quarterback. So I think this is a move, a depth move, if anything, if they bring in Dobbins. Certainly Dobbins would bring down Harvey a little bit. I think we'd stop seeing like 4th-round RJ Harvey in FFPC main events. But I think there'd be a breaking point where he couldn't fall really past it. And I still think Harvey would be the one you'd want to draft. Dobbins was good last year, but again, that was a career year for Dobbins, a guy who struggles to stay on the field. And the markets basically told you what they think of J.K. Dobbins because no one went out and dropped the bag on him. We're talking about a June signing. So just kind of my take on it is Harvey's still the one you want. And if anything, I would probably be more inclined to draft Harvey if his ADP slips down into maybe from the late 4th down to like maybe the late 5th would be a better entry point for drafters in FFPC.
The thing with Harvey, let's put Dobbins aside here, Terp. When you saw what the Broncos did with him in the NFL draft, how far up did you move him up your draft boards without, having the fake helium, right? Like the stuff that you want to separate the noise from the realness. What did you do with Harvey? How do you feel about him right now?
I like the pick. Obviously, I like the player. I love the situation. In Denver with Sean Payton, there's a lot of things to like. I think the Dobbins thing is a little bit more annoying than some people might think. I don't think it's as clear as some people saying it's going to affect his ADP 2-3 rounds. I think that's crazy. I want Dobbins to sign there because I want more Harvey at a discount where I can get him exactly how Theo said it.
Yeah.
It's a great situation. It's a great situation if you started heavy wide receiver, tight end, got an elite quarterback, something like that. He's a perfect guy to, build a team around the running back position if you're waiting a little bit. So I like it, and I want him to, because if Dobbins doesn't sign there and it stays as is, by the time we draft in Vegas in September, Harvey's going to be in a category that might get a little too uncomfortable for me. He's going to steam up until the mid to high 3rd round. I could see him going a little bit higher than that. I don't think it's crazy if all the positivity around him and surrounding him right now continues. So to me, I hope they bring in like a Dobbins type of guy just to muddy his waters a little bit so I can get a little bit more, because right now the draft we did last night, he went 3rd round. That's just rich for me. And
that's
as
crazy
good as the situation is, there's a lot of risk attached to it too.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Like, I'm all for getting your guys, but you also want to make sure you're not buying guys at their ceiling or above their ceiling, and that's something you have to be wary of. Theo, the flip side of this, if Dobbins doesn't sign with anybody else, the Chargers retain his rights. Does that change anything for you in regards to Najee Harris or Amarian Hampton at all?
No, I think that's I think that for me, if you're betting on a guy helping you win big in fantasy, it's still Amarian Hampton. He's the most talented back there. He's the one they used the 1st-round pick on. It might be an annoying first month of the season with Hampton, but this is exactly the kind of profile that when you get into like the second half of the year, it's really going to be hard to hold Hampton back. He's a guy who can handle a lot of volume, tremendous athlete. And again, I think like they signed Najee Harris not thinking that they were going to draft a running back in the 1st round. And it was sort of hey, we made the best possible move we could in the free agent market. But then this situation presents itself where we can draft a player like Amarian Hampton. And I think that at the end of the day, they're going to have to go with the younger, talented, the more talented back with a lot more juice than anything Najee showed us like his last few years in Pittsburgh. So again, I think that would be a Dobbins, the price is right for us. Let's bring in another veteran back. But at the end of the day, my bet would be on Hampton. I think Hampton's a stud. And again, like if any chance that he falls sort of into like the 4th round, I think he's an interesting value there.
Let's move on, guys. I want to talk about Jordan Addison here. Theo, I think that you were posting on X about him recently, that maybe people are undervaluing him, not only because of a healthy Hawkinson, but Justin Jefferson's presence there as well. And then maybe with J.J. McCarthy sort of poised to take over, and you saw what they did with Jordan Mason, trading draft capital to get him from the Niners and then extending his contract. You saw the investment in the offensive line, which could be read as an investment into J.J. McCarthy, could also be an investment into the ground game with Mason and Aaron Jones here. Your thoughts on Jordan Addison, who's not the number one target there, and this might not be a pass-heavy offense this year. Your thoughts on Addison in redraft leagues right now?
I think Addison is absolutely a guy you should be drafting at his current price. You're getting low-end wide receiver 3 price tag on a really talented player, averaged over 13 points per game as a rookie, averaged over 14 points per game last year, had some big spike weeks in the fantasy football playoffs, has 19 touchdown catches in 32 career games. Addison's a baller, and like the market pushed him down last year. There was all sorts of question marks at the quarter, with the J.J. McCarthy, Sam Darnold situation in Minnesota. People said that they couldn't support a secondary pass catcher, and Addison really helped you in a number of weeks. Now you're able to get Addison super cheap again. He's a low-end wide receiver 3 once again. It's just a bet on talent. And I understand that they got Jordan Mason, and this is a team that had 2 new offensive linemen brought in, both from Indianapolis, both good players. But at the end of the day, it's like Addison's just an easy bet on talent situation, and you're able to get him sometimes really, really late. I got him in the 8th round of a 350, and I thought that was ridiculous. Like, I'll take Addison in the 8th round all day long.
Every day.
All day long. It's an easy click. The guy's been nothing but good. And the whole like touchdown regression argument, Jordan Addison is 12th all time, tied for 12th all time in the NFL in touchdown catches over his first 2 seasons in the league. The guy's explosive. The guy scores touchdowns. He's a legit player. He's a first round pick, and the market just doesn't want to react to him positively.
Terp, you are team Addison as well this year, right? One of my highest owned players so far. He's way too cheap in drafts. I mean, people are scared of J.J. McCarthy, and that's fair. I mean, you've never seen it. He never had to do it at Michigan. The team was built different. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's there. Obviously, T.J. Hawkinson's there. The running back situation is solid. A team that should be ascending this year. So the worry's built in. He's a player that I don't think, no matter what happens, unless obviously something happens to Jefferson, is going to ever get moved up. So he's probably going to stay in this range. I just think you just keep taking him. The upside's just massive. I mean, the spike weeks we love, especially coming at the end of the season. Schedule's pretty good. I mean, it's really hard not to like Jordan Addison's where he's getting drafted because, receiver dries up a little bit when you get to that, 9th, 10th, and so on. It's a lot more, muddy, the territory. So to get a guy like Jordan Addison as your wide receiver 4, possibly 5 in some builds, sometimes 3, I'm all in. He's one of my highest owned players right now, and I'll take him as much as I can.
We are going to take the next roughly hour and a half or so to cover Theo Gremminger's journey to $300,000 tonight. He's drafting out of the 2-hole. We are less than 2 minutes away from the start of the draft. Find out what Theo does with that first-round pick when we come back. Dave Terpoilli, Theo Gremminger, Eric Balkman, covering the live FFPC $300,000 best ball tournament draft tonight. Theo and 11 other owners gunning for that big 6-figure grand prize. Don't go anywhere. The Better Sports Network's FFPC Insider Access show resumes right after this.
This is the main event draft season.
A main event team on FFPC $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
We are back on the on the FFPC Insider Access show. Still not used to that yet. I'll get there.
It's a little different.
It is a little different, but we're getting there. And we are going to get to Theo Gremminger's FFPC draft tonight in the best ball tournament, drafting for a $300,000 grand prize. And Theo, by the way, is with Fantasy Points now at Fantasy PTS on the X, at the OG Fantasy on the X. Theo, you're on the clock right now, but I want to talk about Fantasy Points as soon as we can. Jamar Chase goes number 1 overall, and I have the list of drafters here. That's not Taylor Swift. Tyler Swift takes Jamar Chase number 1 overall. You are on the clock at the 102, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm in between Bijan Robinson and Brock Bowers here. I think I'm going to go Bowers, get a little bit of exposure to Bowers a little bit early because
I love it.
you're kind of stuck. The one of the negatives for being at like the 1 spot or the 2 spot, like I was in the hard way and I had to push George Kittle into like the very end of the second round and take him 23 overall. I feel like my edge is a little bit better taking Bowers here, getting it out of the way. And then I can kind of just keep drafting and I'm not forced to draft a second tight end for a while. So I love Bowers. I think he's a top 5 pick in every FFPC main event. So I'll take the edge here.
Yeah, bear in mind, for anybody who's watching who's not familiar with either this show or the FFPC, this is a tight end premium format. So all tight ends will get 1.5 points per catch, as opposed to running backs, receivers, quarterbacks that are only getting 1 point per catch here. Brock Bowers, according to Fantasy Mojo, at Fantasy Mojo, Darren Armani, the webmaster there, the guy who is the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joe's competition. Theo, you're drafting in that again this year, right?
Yeah, I won my league last year.
Congratulations.
I had a down to the wire against Sigmund Bloom, who's done really, really well in this, and I beat Sigmund. It was like the last 2 weeks. His team was heading south, and my team had a couple of big scores. So, and then I won the whole thing with Dan Williamson, where we split that team a few years ago with the GOAT District with JD and Dan. So that was awesome. But Dan gets credit fully in the all-time stats. So, but last year was a win for me. So I love it. I love Fantasy Mojo. Darren's going to come pod with me at some point this summer, but I'm on Fantasy Mojo like 3 times a day. So
yeah, it's great. I mean, I always say for anybody who's drafting in the FFPC, get a membership there. It is totally worth it. You're going to get, and you actually were just posting on X about this, Theo. This is like access to the FFPC data that you just cannot get anywhere else at fantasymojo.com.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's a no-brainer. Like Fantasy Mojo, even if you're not a FFPC drafter, you should have access to. Like, if you want to find out how the board goes in a $5,000 dynasty league, no other site is going to give you that sort of information besides Mojo. And like, I think Underdog also helps, even if you're not an Underdog player, have the Underdog app. And I'm not allowed to talk about the other site, but there's another site that I like as well. But I don't talk about it when I'm on with you guys.
Thank you, Theo. We appreciate that. I will say Darren Armani has Brock Bowers in this format, in this tournament, as 104. So taking Brock Bowers at the 102, not crazy at all. And it makes perfect sense to do that here. To give you kind of the rest of the lay of the land in the first round, and then I want to talk about fantasy points here. Robert Lipkin's team, that's standard backing at the 103. He took Bijan Robinson. Steven, and I'm going to butcher his name tonight, and he was just on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour this past Friday. Steven Georgalos, who is the Fantasy Sopranos, who was ripping on my lack of Fantasy Sopranos or Sopranos knowledge earlier. He takes CeeDee Lamb at the 104 tonight. Corey Docherty, Papa Docs, that's Saquon Barkley for him at the 105. You're going to see Jahmyr Gibbs go to Vegas Mike Swecker taking Gibbs at the 106. Matthew Fox is the Star Fox himself. He gets Justin Jefferson at the 107. Gooseball, that is Dominic Guzzetti, our good buddy. He takes Trey McBride as the second tight end off the board at the 108. The Matrix Solver takes Ashton Genty. The Matrix Solver is, of course, David Hubbard here tonight, drafting from the 9 spot. He gets Genty at 9. Malik Neighbors goes to Embarrassed to Justin Cottle at the 110. Devon Achane off the board to Daniel Osorio, a guy who's been an FFPC Joe before in the Pros versus Joes. He takes Devon Achane at 111, and then Dirk Jeschke from across the pond in the United Kingdom. He ends up taking Puka Nacua at the 112. Theo, you have made a change over to, I know you just did Mind a Mansion with the Podfather, but you are with Fantasy Points officially now. And you guys, like literally hours, maybe even an hour before this draft tonight at Fantasy Points, you have fresh updated FFPC rankings for anybody who wants to check it out.
Yeah, it's a big shout out to the rankings team. Chris Wecht headlines those. He was really, really, really good last year. And anytime anything happens, he updates them like right away. Remember, there was one day we did like an emergency podcast at like 8:30 in the morning, and Chris had updated the projections at like 6:30 in the morning. So the guy can't miss. And I think our FFPC projections are really good. We're going to cover a bunch of FFPC draft stuff this offseason as well. Okay, so I'm up next. I'm getting steamed here. The wide receivers are getting crushed in my queue.
I'll let you look at that here. We got 11 receivers off the board as Theo is on deck here. Just regarding Fantasy Points, Chris Wecht, the guy who co-hosted this show with me before, actually a few months ago. Super knowledgeable, dialed in as all get out. And I'll have another update on a future Fantasy Points co-host on this show coming up at the end of the show tonight. St. Brown, Thomas, Collins, London, AJ Brown, and McConkey have all gone off the board here in the second round. T. Higgins now goes at the 210. Theo, you are on the clock here. 12 receivers off the board. I don't think you necessarily need to force it here with 2 picks in the next 4 selections here. What are you thinking right now at the 211 to go with your Brock Bowers pick in the first round?
I'm not a huge Jonathan Taylor guy, but he's enticing here. Get him a little bit past ADP. I think the 212 is the low for him. It's not like a massive edge. I kind of gravitate towards Kittle and just having a double tight end early build. I think that's sort of my lean, would be to lean into George Kittle here. I think a running back's going to come back around. I wouldn't be surprised if team 1 takes at least 1 wide receiver with sort of the way this board is leaning. So I think I'm going to go with Kittle here and have 2 tight ends. And I think I'm done at tight end too, Terp, unless a great value presents itself.
Terp, this is spicy. A Bowers Kittle start. I love it. And it sounds like you love it too.
Very much. I'm definitely not taking much Jonathan Taylor. I'm not out, but I'm just probably neutral when it comes to overall the Anthony Richardson news that came out today. Makes Taylor a little bit more enticing. So, I'll have some, but just Kittle and Bowers, just an electric start. Kittle's a guy that I feel like, is going to start getting steamed up a little bit, especially, if Ayuk, you don't get any positive press and he's not going to be back till sometime mid-season, end of season. There's a lot of reports out there. You don't know it's true yet, and if, Pearsall's already hamstrung, that's never a good sign early. Yeah. So it's just Jawan Jennings. And if Kittle is the guy, I mean, he's a guy that could easily be the tight end 1 this year. And getting him where you're getting him with Bowers, it's just a big advantage over the field. I
look at that, 2 of the de facto top 3 tight ends to start off your draft. And like you said, Theo, you're pretty much done with tight end now. You can focus on everything else. You are on the clock at the 302. There are some running backs out there. You could reach.
I'm Chase Brown or Jackson Smith and Jigba here.
Yep.
But I feel like I'm going to be happy that I took the wide receiver next time I pick based on the way this room is drafting. Mm-hmm. So Chase Brown, my top 50 rankings are up at Fantasy Points, and they're free. Those are PPR rankings, not tight end premium. But I still have Bowers, McBride, really, and Kittle for that matter, really high up in regular PPR. But so I have Chase Brown higher than JSN. But again, structurally, I don't want to get crushed here at wide receiver. And I think JSN's well priced this year. So this is slightly ahead of ADP for Kittle, slightly ahead of ADP. I mean, all 3 of my picks are slightly ahead of ADP over at Fantasy Mojo, but I don't mind the start.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, like, you use ADP as a tool, but you're not an ADP slave, as they say. I am curious here. Mojo has Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba neck and neck in the ADP for this format here. You were deciding between Brown and Smith and Jigba. Was Garrett Wilson ever part of the conversation or the thought process here for you at the 302?
No, I think I'm a little bit more enthusiastic about JSN sort of as a ceiling bet. There's a little more target competition, but I think New York's going to be really run heavy. I think they're fine though. Like, I think Garrett Wilson is fine. I have JSN slightly ahead of him. I guess if it was 50 drafts, would I want to split my exposure between the 2 of them? That's another conversation to be had, but I do think JSN has a little bit of room to run. And I think the market is sort of fading JSN because he's going to be outside of the slot. Sam Darnold takes on the quarterback job there. So I think the market is sort of fading Seahawks in general. But JSN, I think when he plays outside a little more this year, I think they're going to give him more opportunities for maybe some potential spike weeks. We saw that 1 week where DK was hurt and they had a much higher ADOT for JSN, and he put up like a 35-point plus week in FFPC scoring. And he's very, very young. And again, he had 100 catches last year.
Terp, I want to bring this up to you. I have a buddy who he was the point guard on our YMCA basketball men's league team for years. And
you still play?
No, COVID retired me. COVID retired.
That's fair. I thought you were saying old age retired you.
No, well,
COVID's a good excuse.
I came back for 3 games in 2021, and it was not great. So I am out, and the team is disbanded. But this dude is a total alpha male, right? Big fantasy football player. He bought a golf course here. He owns a golf course now, and he joined the FFPC main event in 2023, I think. First time he ever played. And I was trying to explain to him, the tight end premium, the double flex that you have. And I said, this is unlike what you have been doing for fantasy. And he was dialed in, man. He was like, oh, listen, I know I can get this guy here, this guy here, this guy here. And he rattled off because he knew his draft spot because he was part of the early bird deadline. So he knew like where he was, or not the early bird deadline. He was part of the first round of the main event slots that went out. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to be able to rock this. He got destroyed. And I think part of the reason that he got destroyed, and Theo was just commenting on this, you have to be fungible. You have to be flexible. You see 12 receivers go off the board before you can even pick in the second round. You have to adjust. That not only changes your second round pick, it changes your third round pick. And I think sometimes being able to be flexible and have a team that is still able to be flexible, you're not locked in to zero RB or robust RB or anything like that. I think that's super important. It's something that I think you guys saw last night in the draft that you and Aiden did with Andrew Cooper. We're seeing it again tonight, man.
Theo, tell him to come in and say hi.
Okay, come on, James. Come on. Come here, buddy.
I don't miss those.
My son is here.
What's up, buddy? How we doing?
Impromptu. My draft assistant making an impromptu stop in. So
James, what do you think of your dad's draft so far?
Do you like my team? He says he loves it. He thinks it's a $300,000 winner.
You can boo the team if you want. We won't tell him.
That's right.
What, Theo, what does he root for a team, or is he like just fantasy football?
So we live on Long Island, so it's sort of a little bit of Jets support, but his flag football team is the Raiders, which I am the assistant coach for. And when I say we have a powerhouse team, like we're absolutely steamrolling other kindergarten teams. So the Raiders on in Long Island flag for his age is just an absolute force. And so he sort of likes the Raiders. He's got a couple of throwback jerseys. He's got like a Charles Woodson throwback. Oh, nice. And now and my other son, who's a little bit older, likes the Jets, has some Jets jerseys. But he wants an Ashton Genty jersey. And then my other son wants a Brock Bowers jersey. So I guess we're kind of a Raiders household now. I don't know. At the kids these days, though, they rock stars. They'll rock 100 different teams. So the first jerseys that my sons had were Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, those kind of guys. Yeah. So we're not messing around the Gremminger house. I'm not buying a scrub jersey. No. So there you go.
My kid, he came home the other day wearing a Victor Wembanyama Spurs jersey. And I said to my wife, what the hell is this? We are in an Antetokounmpo household. Yes. This is not, I don't understand this Wemby stuff.
Maybe not anymore, but.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, listen, my son is a huge Knicks fan, but he's also has a Wemby jersey. All the kids have a Wemby. How could you not be a Wemby fan?
It's impossible.
Yeah, no, I like Wemby as a player for sure. We get some Brunson jerseys here in Northeast Wisconsin too, Theo.
Brunson, one of the most likable NBA players of all time. I don't care what people say. He's tough. Yeah. He's got a big heart. The guy just he's awesome. We love Brunson. Yep.
The clutch player of the year for the NBA this year as well. We are coming up on the middle of the fourth round here. The receivers are still flying off the board. We have 21 receivers off the board. We only have 16 running backs. Given that this is best ball, Theo, does that strike you as somewhat weird, or is this just par for the course for an FFPC best ball draft?
I mean, a June draft, things can get sort of weird. We've seen this time and time again. I know Terp and I have been in some where you can't really predict how these things are going to go. So sort of nothing surprises me, especially in a big tournament like this where people want to get a little unique and attack certain positions. So you just roll with the punches, make the best possible picks, and then talk about like correlation a little bit later.
I want to touch on the whole June drafting aspect here in a little bit. You are on deck right now. We have Marvin Harrison now off the board at the 410. Theo, you are officially on the clock at the 411. To recap this for the viewers, you can obviously see Theo in the second spot tonight. He starts off tight end. Only 4 tight ends have been selected so far. Bowers and Kittle go to Theo. He takes Jackson, Smith, and Jigba at the 302, and now he has the opportunity to either add or start his backfield, get a quarterback here. I don't know if that's the way that you'd want to go. Or add another receiver to play opposite Smith and Jigba. Theo, take us through your thought process here.
Yeah, so quarterback is interesting here because there's obviously a quarterback that I think gives you a little bit of an edge structurally.
Hashtag league winner.
Hashtag league winner. It's kind of hard for me to pass him up. Does he come back around is the question.
You are playing with fire.
You know what? I think I'm going to go with the wide receiver, a high-level wide receiver that I think could provide me some spike weeks and take my chances next go-around. I'm going to take Travis Hunter.
Yeah. So with the Travis Hunter pick here too, I can't remember who I was listening to, but they talked about how you want to make sure that you have, before I get into that, you're already back on the clock because team one here tonight, who is just crushing it, that's Tyler Swift, he goes pick, Jaden Daniels, and then RJ Harvey at the 501. You're back on the clock here at the 502. No quarterbacks, no running backs yet, but you could add to your wide receivers as well. I don't know which way you're going to go here. That's a great part of having a flexible team, Theo. What are you thinking here at 502?
Yeah, I think I need to still keep attacking the wide receiver spot. I think that there's a couple of running backs that are enticing. I don't necessarily love the player. I don't love taking an older back here. And I don't think this gives me that much of an edge, but I think Joe Mixon was pretty good last year, and I don't have the sort of limitations that I do with a potential New Orleans offense with Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to go get a little bit of access to Joe Mixon, sort of begrudgingly.
Well, Mixon's one of these guys, and Terp, I'll let you talk on this first here. He's one of those guys that he's far from the most efficient player in the world, but man, does he not get touches every single year, both catching the ball, rushing the ball. I mean, whoever the OC is, whoever's in Houston, Cincinnati too, was the same thing. They give him the rock. And I know we don't love accumulators in this format, but accumulators or not, Mixon's going to get the ball a lot. 502, running back 18. I can get on board with that. Your thoughts on Mixon, Terp?
He's not a sexy pick, but all the sexy picks don't always work out. Joe Mixon's going to get a ton of carries. He's going to get a ton of work. He's going to get the goal line work. He's going to catch passes. That offense should be ascending if Stroud, all these minor injuries that he's having, if that's nothing and nothing to worry about. The receiving room got a lot better. Obviously, you got Nico there. The tight end position is very weak, so you don't got to really worry about that. So it really just comes down to, people get worried about the Kamaras, the Mixons, even Derrick Henry a little bit more, up a little higher. They're all kind of the same. They're getting a little older. They're getting, a lot more carries. But with Joe Mixon, there's really nobody behind him that really scares you. Yeah, they have some young guys that maybe, but to me, it's a safe pick, and it's a pick that it makes a ton of sense in the spot. People hate safe picks. They're scared of safe picks. They all want that sexy, new toy, RJ Harvey and, guys like that. But sometimes they're the guys that really kill your roster construction. A guy like Joe Mixon gets you that 15-point, average, weekly, and has a couple spike weeks in there. You'll be sitting pretty.
Yeah, and Terp, I'm curious your thoughts on Mixon versus like a Chuba Hubbard, which is the kind of another volume. Yeah, I think it's a fair
I'm probably
one.
taking Hubbard.
I sort of
Hubbard would probably have been my pick. Henderson would have been the sexy pick. Like if you're trying, all three of those guys are in a fair range because you have literally like Dave Canales. It's really hard to not love what you saw last year. Yeah, they brought in Rico, and I think he's going to be a little bit annoying, but they paid Hubbard. He's coming off an injury. Nothing I think that's going to make, cause any issues this year, but he's another guy. I said it last night in the drafts. If you're starting heavy receiver or tight end, just like Theo did, you can't go wrong with Joe Mixon, but Hubbard is it's a great pick to have. If you can get him as your RB1 in some builds and RB2 in other builds, it's an exceptional pick because running backs in these rounds, they all look really nice. I mean, they're not sexy. They're not like home runs all, but they all, even Alvin Kamara, yeah, the offense could be bad, but let's just say the rookie quarterback is better than people think. Who else is there to get stealing touches from Alvin Kamara if he stays healthy? I mean, I like all these four guys right here. I like Hubbard the most. I love Henderson's upside, but that could be a little muddy with Ramondre. Mixon's safe, and I think he has plenty of potential for spike weeks. So to me, it's like Hubbard, Mixon, Henderson, Kamara, if I had to rank them in order.
Yeah, and I feel like if I would have passed on running back there, potentially gone,
could have been in trouble.
Devonta Smith, yeah, then I would have been really chasing it. So at least I get a running back with predictable volume there. But I feel like I kind of lost my edge with that pick Whereas like the previous 4 picks, I feel like we're all sort of like, it doesn't always feel right, but I'll see if I appreciate the pick in like 4 rounds.
DK Metcalf might have made a little bit of sense there. It's a little probably high, but still, when you're picking 1, 2, or like 11, 12, ADP really doesn't matter because DK Metcalf's never coming back to you. You're a DK Metcalf stan, so it would have made, to keep that advantage. I understand what you're saying there, but all those running backs are fine. They all have potential to, be RB1s, all spike week potentials. So I don't think you really can go wrong there. To me, I think you made a good pick. I would have took Hubbard, but I mean, you're going to do so many of these, it really doesn't matter. You're going to have both.
Yeah, that's right.
Theo, what do you did Trevor Etienne affect you at all in thinking about a running back there and choosing Mixon over? You mentioned Kamara. I don't think you mentioned Hubbard at all until you asked Terp about it. Does Trevor Etienne? I mean, we Terp talked about Rico Dowdle kind of muddying the waters there, which I agree. I think it would be a little bit of a problem. But what about Etienne in year 1?
I think Trevor Etienne is a little bit more of a threat to like Rico Dowdle being the clear handcuff there. Chuba Hubbard, they paid him a ton of money. He was really, really good last year. The Dave Canales offense really supported his high volume usage. For me, Trevor Etienne, we liked him at fantasy points, like didn't dislike the player, but he's 20 years old right now. He'll be one of the youngest running backs in the NFL. I think his selection was a little bit more of a hedge on a developmental, longer-term answer there. With Jonathan Brooks being a guy that just can't stay healthy. So I think that was more reflective to Jonathan Brooks is going to miss the whole year. Let's bring in it's a franchise that really values the running back position. They gave Miles Sanders the big contract. It didn't work out. They drafted Jonathan Brooks in the 2nd round, and then Chuba Hubbard had success and they paid him a fortune, didn't let him go to free agency. So like they value the running back position a ton. And I think Etienne was just a good player for them to get. I think Etienne, though, even if he breaks through, it's going to be more like, hey, he takes Rico Dowdle's backup job rather than cuts in and threatens Chuba Hubbard. I like Carolina's offense, though. I think they could break out this year. I like Dave Canales. I love the Ted McMillan pick. And that offensive line was a lot better last year.
Yeah,
I agree. Everybody predicting this Jacksonville leap forward, which I think could happen. I think you could look at Carolina having maybe not as big, but a similar leap forward here in year 3 of the Bryce Young experiment as well. I know we're coming up. Well, we still got a few picks left. I wanted to ask you about this, Theo. Mixon, I know the Mixon pick is like, we keep like, why would you take Mixon over Kamara, over Hubbard? Let me ask the last one. You take Mixon, who's been sort of a steady Eddie here, instead of Trevion Henderson, the mystery box, the rookie, who we think is going to be the guy. Bear in mind that Antonio Gibson was eating away at Ramondre Stevenson's workload towards the end of the 2024 season. And now they spent some pretty significant draft capital in getting Henderson in there. Was he ever part of the thought process in taking him over Mixon?
I love Trevion Henderson. I think he's the sort of player that you want to have access to. He's got a high level potential as a receiver. But for me, Mixon ahead of him, I have him ranked ahead of Henderson in my rankings. Henderson would have just been a little too cute there. When you have the predictable volume guys. Like if I would have started out with a running back, if I would have taken Bijan in round 1 instead of taking Bowers, then Henderson would have been a more enticing pick as like my RB2. But I take the predictable volume guy in Mixon ahead of him, especially with this build and head to head. I'm still Mixon over Henderson, but I really like Henderson a lot. I think he's a really, really talented player.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't take 20 ceiling guys. There's a happy medium here. It's like if you're baking cookies and you just dumped a big bunch of sugar in a bowl, that's going to be awful for the cookies. You need the sugar, but you need some flour. You need some chocolate chips. You need all this other stuff too. It's fine and everything, but everything in moderation here I think is important. Tom Smith pointing this out in the YouTube chat. Kyron Williams at the end of the 3rd is nuts. He normally goes at the 304, Theo. Well, you're on the clock right now. We'll talk about Kyron Williams in a second here, but let's get a feel of what you're doing here now. We have arrived at the 6-11. Couple of receivers go off the board. The previous picks before that, Olave and Waddle. Right before them, 2 tight ends, which shouldn't affect your thinking here in Evan Engram and Jonnu Smith. You could obviously add on a running back. There's 24 of them off the board. We have 6 quarterbacks off the board as well. Let us know what you're thinking here at 6-11.
Yeah, I think it's leaning into the running back position here and just taking one. I feel like this is a fine time to take a Caleb Johnson, despite my sort of fears for him. It's sort of get a little bit of a high level potential rookie pick here. So I think I'm going to take Caleb Johnson here.
All right. So number one, why do you have fears about this guy when I listened to you on the Fantasy Points podcast and Dynasty Life too as well? You were like Mr. Caleb Johnson. You love
I love Caleb Johnson, but I just think that the argument for Caleb Johnson is a ton of volume based. I think he's a guy that needs volume. We need to have him in the Najee Harris role. And I think Rodgers coming there, like the glass half full take is the offense got better and Caleb Johnson is going to have an opportunity to score more touchdowns. The glass half empty take is that they'll be a little bit more pass happy than they were going to be. I mean, I love the talent of Caleb Johnson. And again, 6'11" here to get him this late. It's not something I'm like complaining about at all. Don't get me wrong. And yeah, I stand by my dynasty take. I really do love Caleb Johnson. 3rd round pick, but a guy that I think is really, really talented. He's a younger back. I had a tremendous production last year in your neck of the woods in Big Ten country.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was flat out fantastic for Iowa for sure. Chris Godwin off the board now to Tyler Swift, who is drafting in the one spot tonight. Godwin pairing up with Jamar Chase. We are into the 7th round now. Theo on deck. And this is an interesting build. You have 2 tight ends. You have 2 receivers. You have 2 running backs. You could go any which way. Once again, the starting format for this is 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, 2 flexes as well. So if you want to go 3 tight ends, you could. Your thoughts here. What are we going to do at the 7:02? You have built up a squad that is very fungible, and you could scoop up the value where you see it. Do you see anything here? Theo?
Yeah, I think for me, this comes down to a Jordan Addison versus Juwan Jennings argument because I have the correlation with George Kittle. I think head to head, it's a really close argument. I also think Tony Pollard is a good bet here. And I could make an argument for Jones or Odunze. It's really, I can't go wrong. I think I'm going to lean into the correlation here. Gosh, this is a tough one, though, guys. This is a tough one. I'm going to go lean into the correlation. Yeah, I'm going to take Juwan Jennings because it gives me access to potentially the top 2 receivers in San Francisco. Jennings is one that I'm betting on. So I think that this is more of a structural take because it gives me a chance for some correlation. A lot of good names though. 7th round is loaded right now, Terp.
My question is with Rome Odunze. I know he's one of the guys you were thinking about. He seems like a guy that, like, when the season started, we really thought was going to get hyped up and moved up draft boards, but he kind of like going the opposite. He's kind of like stuck in this range where it's like a little uncomfortable, I guess you could say. People don't know, is he's going to be the outside guy? Is there ever a chance he's going to be the slot guy? You know, everybody's wondering who's going to be the St. Brown of Ben Johnson's offense, whether it's going to be Moore, whether it's going to be Odunze, whether it's going to be possibly Burden, or just the tight end Loveland. I mean, there's a lot of unknown right now, and you probably won't know that for a little bit. So why do you think Odunze is he goes right after you? I really like what Team 3 has done.
Yeah, I like Team 3 a lot. I also think Team 5 is super interesting with AJ Brown, Saquon, and also Jalen Hurts. That's a really fun team. I don't know. I like Odunze. I think he's a high upside pick. He definitely could have been in the mix when I was picking Jennings, but I think just the tiebreaker there for me, Terp, was if I have access to Brock Purdy now, I'm going to have some serious correlation with this team.
There's just so much unknown in the wide receiver room in San Francisco right now. But Juwan Jennings, you saw last year. I mean, I think he should be going higher personally, but people saw, I mean, he was a monster last year. I mean,
I'll take him ahead of the Chris Godwin, Jalen Waddle, a few 100%. Wide receivers that went ahead of him. I think Jennings, there's a lot of ambiguity, like you said, and there's also the Brandon Ayuk backers that think he could be the second half of the year hammer. I'm on Team Jennings. I think Jennings is a guy that I talk about him every single podcast. The guy had 77 catches last year, nearly 950 receiving yards, had a bunch of spike weeks, and people just can't kind of get over the fact that he was sort of a waiver wire guy, 7th round pick. He's 27, Terp. The guy's sort of coming into his own.
He's a beast. Yeah, I love him coming out of college, and he had a couple, issues there, but
he's slow. The guy's not slow, he's not fast. He went 7th round. Yeah,
there's a lot of NFL receivers that have been slow over the years that have been outstanding players and outstanding fantasy players. And if you're getting Jennings as your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, I mean, you really can't go wrong there, in my opinion, because there's Pearsall, hamstrung, Ayuk, who knows when he's coming back. I mean, there is nothing else there. It's not like there's anybody out there even there for them to come in and mess the waters up. So
George Kittle, that's it.
Yeah, George Kittle, that's it. And McCaffrey, obviously, he's going to get his, but in a division where they're going to have to score points, I love Juwan Jennings.
Theo, and you put out a pretty good argument for Jennings over Pearsall there. If you were to play devil's advocate here, could you talk yourself into drafting Pearsall over Jennings? I know the hamstring thing is not great, but it is still June as well. But you seem pretty staunch in Team Jennings over Team Pearsall.
Well, I realized I could get burned on this one. I think Pearsall is one where there's a lot of smart people betting on him being like a big breakout candidate. And he was a guy that we did see have those really strong last 2 games last year. One of them was week 18 when it didn't matter, but it still matters in the NFL. San Francisco definitely got a good look at Ricky Pearsall. The hamstring thing I don't love for a young player missing some time this offseason. I think that the X factor for Pearsall where he could burn a lot of people, like the pass on him, like I'll say like the upside argument for Pearsall is that he absorbs a bunch of the Deebo Samuel manufactured touches in this offense, where like he won't be given like the 40 rushing attempts that Deebo's given every single year, but maybe they emulate that by getting Pearsall the ball around the line of scrimmage, utilize his athleticism. So there's some ways he could get us by passing on him. But I would rather bet on the guy that we saw take that big step forward last year. I mean, Juwan Jennings had a higher target share than George Kittle. I mean, had a higher first read rate. This was a guy that just kind of exploded off the page over at Fantasy Points data on a number of the metrics that we like to look at for wide receivers. I just think it's sort of people don't think they're drafting upside here when they draft Jennings, Terp. They're sort of like, I'm sort of drafting like
he's another guy who looks like a boring pick.
Yeah, it looks like a boring pick.
If you look at his numbers last year, there's nothing boring about it.
Nothing boring about him. And a guy who could score 50 points. Yeah, you could drop a 50. You could drop a near 50 pointer. You're good at football, period.
Don't matter. You don't see that often from some scrub who just comes off the streets.
I would say like within the last 3 weeks, we saw Pearsall, I don't want to say comfortably going ahead of Jennings, but solidly for sure. And now that has changed. Jennings has moved ahead of him. FFPC drafters are taking Jennings over Pearsall more often than not.
I think Pearsall in the 7th round is rich. I mean,
well, 808. Here's the thing: 805 is his normal ADP for this tournament. Okay. But bear in mind, and Theo talked about this, how the receivers are getting pushed up tonight.
Yeah.
So then I think 7-11, I think makes a little bit more sense. Now, could that
all these drafts are so different? I mean, you see so many different correlations and picks that these guys are trying to build teams, and guys getting pushed up to a little bit uncomfortable territories, but it makes sense for the structure. And, Ricky Pearsall as a 4th receiver on team 11, not terrible. Theo gave you all the great points of how he could beat you. Yeah. So if that happens, you're sitting on a gold mine. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't, but I'm definitely team Jennings over Pearsall too.
We are in the 8th round tonight of this FFPC Best Ball Tournament. Theo Gremminger drafting from the 2 spot, going for $300,000, as is Team 11 tonight, Theo. Everybody's going for $300,000. But Daniel Osorio, a longtime FFPC veteran, he ends up grabbing Kyren Williams. He stops the Kyren Williams slide at 311, more than a half round after where he normally goes in this format. How do you break down the Rams rushing attack this season, knowing that they invested a 3rd round pick in Blake Corum last year, but then they turn around and grab Jarquez Hunter this year after already having Corum and knowing that this was a really good class of running backs here? I think we can tell ourselves a lot of stories about the Rams backfield. What is the story that you're telling Fantasy Point subscribers?
Yeah, so I think it's still Kyren Williams is the one you want to bet on. But do they mix in, like it's been a Sean McVay thing to utilize only a single back. They've talked about, like you've heard the general manager, you've heard them sort of talk about using the words like committee. And I think they're talking about committee in terms of like skill sets. But Jarquez Hunter, I think, is the handcuff that I'd want. I think he's got a lot of juice coming in. Blake Corum had a lot of enthusiasm last year. was sort of viewed as a high-end handcuff, but I would rather have access to Jarquez Hunter. So I think it's still, at the end of the day, it's Kyren Williams. He's the one you want to bet on. You could make an argument against Kyren Williams based on the amount of volume he had to absorb last year as a regression candidate, a sub 200-pound back getting that much volume, but he's still a fine bet. And when you draft him at the end of the third round, it sort of takes away a lot of the risk. So I think the team that got him at the 311, that's fine. Do I want to take him at the 2-3 turn? Not so much, Terp, but I think when he falls, it's fine to take him.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Kyren Williams fan. I wasn't last year. It definitely burned me. He pretty much was a beast pretty much all season. But like you said, it's a different year. So, I'm still in that camp. I will take Kyren Williams more than I did last year. It was a pretty painful fade and a pretty expensive fade. But if you're getting him where this drafter got him, I'm perfect there. That's no issues whatsoever. I'll take him in the mid-third round, be okay with that. Like you said, the 1-2 turn, I'm out there. I just think there's guys I like more. Hunter, obviously Corum is still there. I know McVay loves that one running back, usage, but those guys are going to be annoying. And we have Devontae Adams being added. So that's just another, guy who's going to demand attention. So Kyren Williams will definitely be on more teams this year than he was last year. And hopefully Blake Corum, the torture of last year doesn't happen.
It's funny because Corum is going basically a round and a half behind Jarquez Hunter right now. Running back 57.
They clearly drafted Hunter with a reason, and that's not a good sign for Blake Corum. That's
right.
The way it looks. You can say whatever you want. I love Corum last year. He was one of my highest owned handcuffs, running backs, whatever. It didn't work out. I still buy into what I thought and how I thought it was going to work out. It just didn't work. But this year it's tough to draft Blake Corum because, if you're taking a shot like real late, maybe, but it's hard to tell a story to see how he gets there to help you.
What story is Theo Gremminger telling himself about who the correct player is to draft at the 8-11 tonight? 3 receivers, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, Bowers, Kittle, Mixon, Caleb Johnson, Smith and Jigba, Hunter, Juwan Jennings. We go with another running back here. A fun one.
I want to talk about this.
Running back here. This is going to be good. Theo, take us behind the scenes of why Cam Skattebo was the pick for you as running back 33 at the 8-11 tonight.
I just want to have some exposure to Skattebo in a big field tournament like this. And Terp, I think this 8-9 turn is about right to take your shot on a New York Giants running back. So I'm not a massive Skattebo guy, but I think structurally this one was okay for me. You got a look on your face though, Terp. You don't love this one.
I'm a Tracy guy. I'm not a Skattebo guy. Tracy's one of my highest owned running backs so far. I was surprised by the pick. I just
this
think
is
that,
one where
he showed me enough last year. With this structure, I probably would have went Tracy.
Yeah, and I'll say
that
Tracy's in play here. I don't mind the double tap either.
Mm-hmm. For you taking Skattebo,
Singletary's also there going to be annoying.
I don't know about that. I think that he might get sort of phased out. I think the double tap here sort of is interesting. Double tapping these Giants running backs, hoping for some consistent scoring from the running back 1 position there. It's a little bit low EV. There's a couple of other ways I could play this pick. I think Brandon Ayuk is interesting to sort of keep buying into the San Francisco passing game. I think Jaden Reed is super interesting. I think Tucker Kraft is interesting. I don't know, Terp. Do you have a lean with this pick? I'm sort of on the fence here. I'm going to phone
like the Green Bay guys, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think
it's like Jaden Reed or Tucker Kraft. I think Tucker Kraft makes a lot of sense. I probably would lean Reed based off.
Yeah,
you have Kittle, you have Bowers. I love Tucker Kraft this year. He's one of my highest owned tight ends. But
I took Jaden Reed I took Jaden Reed in the 350 this week as well. He's going to like the late 7th in some of these main events, and you're getting him here. Almost
you don't feel great about it, but you still see the path that he is easily if the rookies don't pan out, Golden, getting drafted 1 pick before him. It's just, it's a solid pick. There's nothing else I could say about it.
And you don't have to worry about the consistent weekly usage. You can just sort of bank a couple of spike.
He's going to be on the field. You think he's going to be on the field even more. He's not a guy you have to click the button. It's a best ball league, so you just want his spike weeks to keep hitting your lineup. there's going to be times when he's just not a factor, and that's okay. But he'd be a little bit more of a tricky click, in my opinion, in like a guerrilla draft or a main event where you have to actually hit the button every week to have start Jayden Reed.
I'll say this too, regards to Jayden Reed in Green Bay. He talked to the press this past week at OTAs, and he said he did not have to have surgery on his shoulder, torn labrum, and there was something else going on there too. But it did take him, he said, about a good 3.5 months to rehab till it's back up to what he needs it to be at. Jayden Reed was heavily involved in the Packers passing game last year. The Packers passing game, which was still existent, even though you had this focus on pounding the ball with Josh Jacobs. Jayden Reed was still super involved until he hurts his shoulder, and then he's basically not involved the rest of the season. Matt LaFleur has already alluded to this as why they did not get the ball or make a concerted effort to get him the ball later on in the season. Now that he's healthy, I think even with Golden there, he's going to be instrumental in sort of what the Packers want to do. Green Bay has a glut of receivers there. I think in best ball, I'm much more likely to take players like Golden, players like Reed. Dobbs, I'm kind of out on both in redraft and both in managed leagues and best ball. But I think Reed makes a lot of sense here at the 902. He had 230 plus yardage weeks in the first month of the season last year. And I think we could see that continue going forward in 2025. So Theo, I really like the pick here. I know you waffled around on it, but I think that was a strong selection.
I think it was just a multiple picks that were enticing there. I think Kraft would have been a really interesting one if Kraft could have been like the tight end that ends up being sort of the surprise pick to finish in the top 5 scorers. That could have been a hammer pick based on my tight end heavy build. And I think Kraft is really good. I think it makes sense. I think the whole conversation we're having, it makes sense to take a shot on the Green Bay pass catchers. And a shout out to Andrew Schellenberg, a friend of all of ours, who I draft a bunch of teams with. And I split a team with him and Dan Williamson in Vegas. Schellenberg took Matthew Golden right after Jayden Reed went in his slow main event. So like we sort of had this conversation. Golden's a guy that a lot of people are kind of beating up, but I think sort of the range of outcomes, he could end up being the one. But I think Kraft, Golden, and Reed all go in that range with one another where they're interesting. So yeah, the Scatterboo pick sort of tilted me a little bit in retrospect. But I don't mind having another running back in this build. It's did I draft the correct one? And Terp, I don't know if the story's been completely told. Like I had a ton of Tyrone Tracy, drafted him in every dynasty league. We drafted him in every best ball league we did together last year. But the guy's fumble happy. The guy does put the ball on the ground. And Brian,
that's a big worry. That's my biggest worry is,
at the end of the day,
is he going to put him in the doghouse if he drops a fumble early in the season? It's going to be, the rookie and obviously, a mix in of Singletary, and he's just going to get phased out.
I don't see the
Brian
Singletary.
Daboll's coaching for his
I don't
job.
see the Singletary. Singletary got phased out like a lot last year.
See it, being just a muddy situation.
Yeah. I don't know. It's definitely one where I'm not afraid to take a chance on. And like on an underdog, I have a bunch of Tracy and a bunch of Scatterboo. So like I'm sort of I think I'm splitting my exposure to those guys, but now we're seeing a quarterback run here, Balky.
We are, and I guess I should ask you, because I know there's a certain quarterback that you were hoping that fell to you. Now you know he's not going to. What's the pivot off of this, or is the pivot simply just waiting?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just take value here. I still have San Francisco correlation without necessarily having the stack. So I still have exposure to the passing game without Brock Purdy. So it's not as positive. Would I've liked my build better if I took Jayden Reed there and then reached for Brock Purdy ahead of a bunch of guys? I'm not sure. But it doesn't ruin the correlation to miss out on your quarterback. You still have exposure to 2 49ers. So here I don't feel like I'm forced to take a quarterback here, but if there's a few more quarterback picks, I might have to pull the trigger on one at the 10-11 turn.
We're looking at 13 quarterbacks off the board, now 14 quarterbacks off the board, with David Hubbard going Fields and Prescott back-to-back in the 9th and 10th round. The good news is, I mean, you're pretty solid at running back and receiver. You're pretty solid at receiver and tight end, and I think you're fine at running back. You could do the double tap quarterback here, which is something that I think is in play as well. But again, and Theo, you've done a zillion of these. The importance of being flexible, and I know I keep coming back to this, but the importance of being flexible and being able to pivot to when the value falls to you is so important in these drafts.
Yeah, I don't think you want to like be here and say I have to double tap anything. I think again you sort of take the best possible value. There's a couple quarterbacks that I like that are on the board, and a couple of potential correlation plays. And there goes one of them. Drake May goes off the board.
So here's what I want to do, Theo. Let's pop out. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, you're going to make your pick here at 10-11 and then the 11:02. We're halfway through the $300,000 FFPC Best Ball Tournament. Dave Terpoilli, Theo Gremminger hanging out. I'm Eric Balkman. Don't go anywhere. FFPC Insider Access rolls on right after this.
This is the main event draft
We're drafting
season.
a main event team on FFPC $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
What's up, everybody? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm, and I'm here to talk to you guys about how to take advantage of your takes now that the NFL draft is over. I got them. You got them. We've all been thinking about ways to go with this rookie class, maybe even ways to get away from the rookie class, to go with the older veterans, to take advantage. Dynasty startup leagues at FFPC.com. My FFPC, that's the place to play. That's where you can go in and you can load up on the rookies from this class. If you love Ashton Genty, if you love a Marion Hampton, if you're fired up about Pat Bryant, whoever it is, you can go in and get all these guys now and have them for their entire careers. Now is the time to get in and do it. Or if you don't like these rookies, if you think it was stupid that the Bears took Colston Loveland, if you think Emeka Egbuka is going to be buried behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for years and years, flip it. Go in and draft veterans. Go in and draft guys now while everybody else is going for picks and players and prospects. Load up. Put your name on the trophy and the money in your pocket right now. And the best place to do it, where I do it, where all the experts do it, FFPC, myffpc.com. And when you use promo code ALARM, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. So get in there now and do a dynasty startup draft. Draft your team. Show everyone that you would have dominated the real NFL draft, that you're the real best GM, and win some money over at myffpc.com now.
We are rolling on here on the FFPC Insider Access Show. Theo Gremminger from Fantasy Points joining me tonight, as well as Dave Terpoilli. Theo has made his picks in the 10th and 11th round, which will bring us to the halfway point of this FFPC $300,000 Best Ball Tournament draft that we're covering live tonight. You have broken the proverbial quarterback cherry here, going with Josh Downs at wide receiver at the 10-11, and now Jordan Love at the 11:02. So we'll talk about the Love pick first here, Theo. Was this sort of like, I don't want to say a slam dunk, but knowing that you had Jayden Reed in the 9th round, knowing that you're going to have possibilities to add Green Bay receivers later on in this draft, did that make Jordan Love that much more appealing?
Yeah, absolutely. The Jayden Reed bet is sort of also a Jordan Love bet. We saw 2 years ago Jordan Love give us like a top 6 finish at the quarterback position. Last year became much more turnover prone, and also Green Bay went very run heavy over the second half of the year. I think the playoff loss to Philly, where Love had 3 turnovers and they only scored 10 points as a team, sort of was a wake-up call to Green Bay. And we saw them invest in wide receivers in the NFL draft. Not only did they take Golden, they also took Savion Williams in the 3rd round. So I think they want to be a little bit more balanced this year. And again, I get a little correlation. This team is probably a 3 QB build, having Jordan Love as my first QB off the board in the 11th round. So I don't love it, but I don't hate it. And I sort of preferred him a little bit more to like Trevor Lawrence, where I just don't love Trevor Lawrence, and I wouldn't have liked to have invested in him as my QB1 despite the Travis Hunter pick.
So why? Let me ask you about Lawrence. Why don't you like him this year? I mean, things should be better, right? Liam
No, I think
Cohen, Travis Hunter. I know there's no Evan Engram, but you got Brenton Strange there as well. But you're a little bit down on him.
Yeah, I just don't love Trevor Lawrence. He's been a guy that sort of like left us wanting a lot more. Jordan Love's best season as a pro is better than any year Trevor Lawrence had as a pro in a smaller sample size of starting seasons. And I think that Green Bay has a little bit more continuity. Like, I love Liam Cohen. I think he's super smart. Obviously, I love Travis Hunter. I like Brian Thomas Jr. a ton. But it's a big projection for Jacksonville. Also, some offensive line questions. Green Bay's a team that's won a lot of games under LaFleur. I think this year they'll continue to be a strong team. I think it's just a little bit easier bet for me to make. Maybe if I'm chasing an upside bet, maybe Lawrence is it, because, again, the Liam Cohen factor, the fact that he's got the two wide receivers, they'll be more pass happy. But I just like Jordan Love just a little bit more.
Robert Lipkin chiming in on YouTube. He's watching the broadcast. He's drafting right next to you at the 3 spot tonight, Theo.
Good job, Robert.
Yeah.
Nice
Very well done so far.
Yeah.
Couple of rookies here. He gets the Caleb Williams, Colston Loveland, Luther Burden.
I love the Egbuka pick. I almost took Egbuka instead of Love and would have just pushed it all around. I think like getting Egbuka this late, Burden, Egbuka, all it takes is one injury in the either wide receiver room, and both those guys are fantastic. And I like the Adunze, Burden, Caleb Williams stack is really, really strong.
Don't forget Loveland.
And Loveland.
He's got Loveland too. I love that.
He's all in on the Bears. And the
that's
Bears and Bengals is two good teams to be on.
Yeah, Burrow and Chase Brown, T. Higgins. It's good. It's solid. Theo, let's talk about the Josh Downs pick. I have talked with my co-host on the High Stakes Fantasy Footballer, Farrell Elliott, who, if he's not the president, he's got to be the vice president of the Michael Pittman fan club, a guy who was playing with a fractured back or tried to play through a fractured back last year. His shortcomings were the benefit for Josh Downs, who had a really good season. You had the opportunity to take Downs or Pittman as far as Colts receivers. Why was Downs the pick for you there?
I'm always Josh Downs over Pittman at this point. I worry about Tyler Warren coming in and sort of taking away the pro Pittman argument. Downs is sort of his own guy. He's going to play the slot. Downs was the only one that was successful with Anthony Richardson. I think Downs is one where if the Richardson injury is something that becomes even worse and it's going to clearly be Daniel Jones, then I think Josh Downs is the guy who could move up significantly in ADP. Downs is really good. This is a guy that I think is a really, really good value across multiple best ball platforms. He's an easy click on Underdog, and I love getting him here in like the 10th round. I took a bunch of Downs last year in high stakes drafts. I just think he's a very good player, and he's an easy bet to make at this current price.
I know we talked a lot about the Packers passing game, but I want to throw it to Sean Green on YouTube, who had this question. Terp, I'll ask you first, and then Theo, I'll come back to you since you're the one who drafted Jordan Love. How many touchdowns did Jordan Love throw for this year? And I guess we could combine rushing touchdowns in that metric as well, when you consider how run-heavy Green Bay was last year and knowing that they've added a lot of beef on the offensive line. They signed Aaron Banks from the Niners, who is one of their, I think, the biggest offensive lineman, or was the biggest offensive lineman on the team until they drafted Anthony Belton in the second round of the NFL draft out of NC State, who now is the biggest lineman on the team. So they're adding beef there. I think that whatever you call it, sort of the
spit it out.
I don't want to say campaign, like it's the recurring theme that I have heard from Packers coaches talking about the Aaron Banks and the Anthony Belton picks is big don't get small. In other words, when it gets to be late November, December, and they want to run the ball, they're going to have the beef up front to separate these defenders from Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, so on and so forth. So when you consider that, yeah, there could be a regression in the mean when it comes to passing, but how much regression is there going to be? Terp, if you were to look at Jordan Love combined rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns this year, what number do you think you'd land on?
Last year, he had 25 passing touchdowns, rushing touchdowns off the top of my head. I don't remember. I think I could see him getting to 28. I think it's in the range of possibilities, passing wise. The rookies, if they take that step, it definitely makes a ton of sense. I think that division they're gonna have to score. They play an extremely slow pace, but Minnesota's better, Chicago's better, Detroit's a juggernaut. So, Jordan Love is going to have to improve his game because last year he wasn't great. I was a Jordan Love stan 2 years ago when he broke out. He was my favorite quarterback in drafts, and it worked out. Last year I had some, but not a ton. There's never a time when Jordan Love beat you last year.
Well, but to his point and what he was saying too, that knee was never right. That he hurt week 1 in Brazil against your Eagles, Terp. And
100%. Once he went down that game, he never was the same.
No. Theo, you're back on the clock here at the 12-11. 3 running backs go off the board here. Tyjae Spears, Trey Benson, Isaac Garendo, all representing a certain amount of upside. Is that upside you want to chase in the backfield right now, or do you want to go elsewhere?
Yeah, so I had all those guys in my queue, and I think I do need to lean into the running back position here. I like Ray Davis. I took him in the hard way. I've been taking Ray Davis a lot, and I think that there's a couple of guys in my queue that I think could come back around for me. So I'm going to lean into Ray Davis.
Ray Davis is the pick at the 12-11. I don't really get wrapped up in the whole James Cook contract thing because I think at some point he'll be in. I think he
has no leverage.
He has no leverage, exactly. I think that what's more compelling to me is the touchdown regression for James Cook, and then perhaps Ray Davis, Theo, being utilized a little bit more than he was last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ray Davis is just good at football, and it's probably a lot of it's a contingent upside bet. If James Cook is out there, it's his job. But we all saw how good Ray Davis could be in the week that James Cook missed, and it's also year 2 for Ray Davis. And also, if they don't extend him, that was team 1. I rolled the dice that they wouldn't triple tap the quarterback. They sniped me on that
team
one.
Team 1, that's just silly. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a silly one for sure. And he does get a little correlation. Brenton Strange was in my queue as well.
He's got 3 Jaguars for his last 4 picks. Tyler Swift
stuck me with that one for sure. I'm gonna go away from quarterback Terp. I think I'm gonna roll the dice here again. I'm just gonna go Trey Harris. And hopefully Trey Harris
options.
Yeah, I'm going to go Trey Harris. That was
they're not the sexiest options, but there's definitely 2 that are out there that are 3 that are out there.
Team number 1 definitely sticking it to me for not letting him get Ray Davis, I think.
So Trey Harris is the pick here for you, Theo.
Yeah. Back to Ray Davis. Let's close out the thought. So I just think he's good. I think he's a high-end handcuff in a really, really good offense. And he's been sort of a easy guy for me to draft. And there's some like very sharp people that we know that also have a lot of access to Ray Davis. And if James Cook, the contract situation lingers though, Terp, like crazy stuff happens. If there is some holdout, Ray Davis will be the next man in.
And as we get closer to August and, obviously September drafts in Vegas, it's going to be interesting to see if James Cook we've seen it year after year. Jamar Chase last year got pushed down. I know it's a way different, draft selection, but got pushed down way longer than he should have went. And people got league winners. Ray Davis obviously is not in the same range as Jamar Chase, but in that offense, if James Cook just wants to play hardball or misses a game, misses 2, you could be talking about a guy that just takes a job and then what?
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
I'm trying to Alex P. Keaton just chimed in on the chat. I'm looking for the team. 3 receivers after 13 picks is interesting. Everybody has more than 3 receivers, right? I'm not missing it.
Team
here?
1.
Oh, team 1. Okay, yeah.
Team 1
okay, here we go. So Chase Godwin, Matthew Golden, and then 3 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends. Yeah, Theo, you get burned every now and then, but that I would have made the same bet as you. Is it's Lawrence is going to come back.
Betting on a person not to take their QB3 before their wide receiver 4 at this stage is a bet I'll continue to make. It puts a little pressure on me at the quarterback position, but like Terp said, it's already a 3 quarterback build, so it's not as important for me to get these guys. So
there's an outside shot that it might be a 4 quarterback build.
Could be a 4 quarterback build with a little bit of correlation here.
You have plenty of options with what you drafted so far.
This is
true. I have a question about Team 1, the guy they drafted in the 7th round, Isaac Pacheco. Where do you stand in the Kansas City backfield? Where do you?
I wanted to
Pacheco?
I wanted to fade I wanted to fade Pacheco. That's not the kind of bet I want to make. Like last year, he was a guy that I was, telling a lot of people to completely get out from in Dynasty. I think that was the correct advice to give people Dynasty-wise, where his Dynasty value has dropped very, very, very much. But Terp, he's just so cheap. And there's all these guys vying for the running back 2 spot. You get the positive coach speak with Andy Reid. There's some really sharp people that we all know that are on Pacheco. So I've actually drafted some Pacheco, and I like betting on Brashard Smith. And you can get Brashard Smith as like your final round type bet.
Free,
he's free. So he's a round 18 guy on Underdog in FFPC, sort of around that range. So Smith is the bet that I would be willing to make on the backups to him. But right now it's Pacheco's job to lose. I do think Kansas City is going to be a little more wide receiver centric with Rashee Rice healthy, with Xavier Worthy coming on, and with Hollywood Brown. There's a lot to like.
Kelsey's still there, obviously.
And Kelsey's still there. But Pacheco can't really kill you at this price tag where you're able to get him. Like, he's fine. And structurally, he makes a lot of sense.
I don't have any. I'm pretty much been on the fade so far, but he's getting cheaper. So if, like you said, it can't really hurt you in a structure, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's definitely a guy that I'll add some. I don't think I'll ever get to, level with the field, but, that offense is hard to ignore. And we've seen him have success in the offense. Obviously, the opportunity's there. So, we'll see. We'll add some, but he's not going to be a full fade. But as of now, I don't think I've drafted him once.
So I want to point this out here in this draft. Number one, Steven Georgalos, who is drafting Fantasy Sopranos at the 4 spot, said that you just sniped him, Theo, and it's payback for the snipe that he made on you and getting Drake May at the 10:09. I also have Mike Swecker hanging out on YouTube watching this. Mike is picking in the 6 spot tonight, and he is all but guaranteeing that you are not going to get 3 quarterbacks in this draft tonight. Now, I will say this. I think you can get 3 quarterbacks in this draft pretty easily. Will they be desirable quarterbacks? That I'm not sure. We'll see what happens on that as we are coming back in the 14th round. How much of an emphasis are you putting on that position, Theo, right now, knowing that, as Sean Green pointed out on YouTube, everybody's going quarterback crazy in this draft. 24 quarterbacks taken now just starting the 14th round. Is this something that you put a premium on for the rest of the draft, or knowing that, like, listen, they can't just keep drafting quarterbacks? Like, I'm going to get some value called to me.
Well, they definitely can. I've gotten stuck in drafts like this before. The Geno one hurt because I have Bowers. I was kind of banking on getting some Geno Smith, but I think Team 10 saw the way sort of the room was going. There's still some quarterbacks. It's just, again, lack of desirable ones, so to speak. So, I mean, it's not great. It's not great. I don't think this is a $300,000 team with simply Jordan Love, but hopefully I can catch up a quarterback a little bit. Cam Ward goes off the board. So a lot of 3 quarterback builds here, Terp. I don't think we're going to see too many 2 quarterback builds. Team 11 is naked Patrick Mahomes. And I'm the only other team with 1 other quarterback. So hopefully some of these teams chill out a little bit. Maybe
you're
Team
kind of
5.
in a tough spot here because you have to almost take 1 coming here. I know which one you're gonna take, but you might have to take 2 and just not get burned, because Team 11 is probably going to take.
Is Team 1 going to take his fourth quarterback? Just
he's that Trevor Lawrence thing would have annoyed me. Certain things pop up in drafts that just like, you never in a million years think he's taking Trevor Lawrence, even with the 100%. Correlation with strains. I get that, but like, you bank on that. That's why you play your Russian roulette and you think it's going to get through and it doesn't. That's just that would annoy me, because if you take, put Trevor Lawrence in there, not that Trey Harris ain't a bad pick, but team looks, a lot better.
Robert Lipkin on the clock here at the 14:10, which means as soon as he makes his pick, Theo will be on the clock, which he is now. Roshan Johnson goes at the 14:10. Theo, you have your pick of the litter here at 14:11. Take us through what you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's do I take the chance on quarterback? Do I double tap? Do I go running back? I think I'm going to take Matthew Stafford just to kind of solidify myself a little bit. I don't have any correlation, but I think Stafford's good, and I'll take him in the sort of this range.
Very surprised on where he's getting drafted. I'm not sitting here saying he's a superstar in any way, but they have the offense. I mean, with Adams,
I think I'm gonna maybe actually go running back and put the pressure on team 1 to see if he wants to take his 4th.
I like it too. I like it. I would
forget it. I'm gonna take.
You've done it this far. You're going to get Stafford or very likely another player who you have,
So there's like two or three running backs that I could take here. I could also just take J.K. Dobbins with the chance, but I'm going to take Braylon Allen. I think he's interesting. I think the Jets staff likes him, and I think he'll have some usable weeks. He had a couple usable weeks last year. So here we go. I think I'm going to get my Matthew Stafford here, unless this guy wants to get cute.
Well, he's already gotten cute.
He's gotten pretty cute.
This would be sexy at this point.
So my question with Stafford is, why not Sam Darnold?
Yeah, Sam Darnold's probably the smarter structural pick, but
for stacking purposes, obviously with JSN, Stafford naked is just ugly.
Okay, but the other thing to keep in mind there is if you're trying to solidify,
you have options with Stafford though. There is some tricky options that
it's not necessarily naked. There's a couple of options for him a little bit later.
There are some options later that you could get. You could tell a story to get there. It's both those two don't come back. I mean, you're
right.
Yeah, it's
kind of stuck here to take one.
I'd rather take my chances on Stafford here, having a big season, with and have a little bit of naked Stafford, and maybe in the final rounds get something a little interesting here.
Yeah,
Terp. It's a tough spot to be in. It's tough for us to be in, or maybe I build into the correlation with Love and just forget it and have a little naked Stafford to help me get through weeks.
I'm gonna name one of my teams this year, Naked Stafford. It just sounds great.
It's and I agree with Michael Swecker in the chat. It's brutal. It's brutal. What do you want to do?
John Terry brought this up a couple of weeks ago on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and he said, because I was talking about Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua there, and he was like, well, yeah, that's good, but keep in mind they had Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua there, and you didn't really see – you saw good games from those guys individually, but did you ever see these big blow-up games from Stafford? Not necessarily. No. So I think Stafford is what he is, and Terp, this is what I was going to say before in regards to Stafford versus Darnold. Like, you kind of know what you're getting with Stafford. There is a bit of the unknown in Sam Darnold. And
I don't like Sam Darnold whatsoever. I just think Seattle to me is a big disaster this year. I didn't like him paying him. I didn't think it made any sense whatsoever. I thought they should have got involved in the rookie quarterbacks, but they did. But just structurally, I probably would have went Darnold just because I just stack
with Smith and Jigba. I get it. And listen, you're trying to win $300K.
The Lawrence thing would have tilted me a lot, and I would have forced myself to probably take Darnold.
I mean, you're probably right from a best ball theory. I just can't do it, Terp. I feel like
there's a chance. There's a chance he comes back. I mean, there's two options that you still have that make sense, structure wise. You're definitely gonna take a third quarterback. It's just a question of who it is, and I mean, you would probably like to avoid the Giants situation and hope one of the team 11 gets involved in that. But there's two other guys. One we mentioned already in Darnold. There's a chance he comes back. Probably not. But there's another guy that news came out today that does offer some upside if things work out.
I want to get to that because Sean Green was already talking about that in the YouTube chat. We'll get to that in a second. Since I want to be timely here, Theo, off the board at the 1508 to Dominic Guzzetti, our friend from the old country, or at least his ancestors were. He takes Marshawn Lloyd at running back 58. I'd be hard pressed to find another analyst in the industry that was higher on Marshawn Lloyd from a dynasty and or redraft standpoint than you were last year. Had some freak injuries, like appendicitis or whatever, like just really bizarre stuff. Where do you stand on Marshawn Lloyd going into the 2025 season, knowing that the Packers really didn't address the running back position at all in free agency or the draft? And seemingly, only Josh Jacobs is in front of him right now, and you can get him at the 1508.
Yeah, I mean, Marshawn was right there with Braylon Allen for me. I was super enthusiastic about Marshawn last year. You don't like to see guys that kind of fail to stay healthy, but I think the enthusiasm is there from the Green Bay staff with Marshawn. And if he's healthy, he's the clear handcuff on a team that was extremely run happy. Marshawn, everything we said about him as a prospect last year, I sort of stand by. Very, very athletic. Green Bay used a 3rd-round pick on him, was a stud at the Senior Bowl. So I think anything, we'll take the discount this year. I still have exposure to him in Dynasty. I've still taken him in a ton of best ball drafts.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I like seeing team number 8 get him there. I think that's a really, really good bet.
So the other thing, as long as we're talking about Marshawn Lloyd versus Braylon Allen, and I looked at this, I was surprised to see that there's this deep yawning chasm between Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament, according to Fantasy Mojo ADP. Braylon Allen, running back 54 at the 1507. Isaiah Davis, running back 83 at the 2008. I guess I'm surprised that there's 5 rounds of disparity. I think these guys are closer, or they should be closer in ADP based on what we saw last year. But maybe, Theo, you can explain it to me better. I mean, Braylon, I'm a Wisconsin guy. I should love Braylon Allen. But from what I saw with Isaiah Davis last year, I have some pause.
I think it's interesting. I think that Braylon Allen could have a role. But I think that if Breece Hall were to go down, Davis could be a guy that would absorb a lot of the pass catching. I do think that they want to get touches for all 3 backs. I do think it's going to be Breece Hall leading the charge. And again, Allen sort of in his sort of bruiser role, sort of like almost like an AJ Dillon type role, I think will be there. But Davis is talented. I think Davis is way more of a like for like replacement for Breece Hall if Breece Hall were to go down. So I've taken some chances on Davis as well. But I think from a best ball perspective, I think even if Allen stays healthy, even if Breece Hall stays healthy, I think Allen's going to have a few usable weeks like he did last year. Then you factor in the rushing quarterback, Justin Fields, what he's going to open up for them sort of with the RPOs and the improved offensive line situation in New York. They get Armand Membu. I just think Braylon Allen, he's fine. And getting him here in like round the 14-15 turn, if he gives me a couple of usable weeks on a team that's pretty weak at running back and looking to catch up, I think I'll take that. So I think in theory, I'm Allen ahead of Davis, and I think that's correct. But I think Davis is also a guy that you want to have him some exposure to in like a huge field tournament like this.
I want to talk about Terp with Breece Hall in a little bit. But let me ask you this, Theo, because we haven't talked about fantasy points enough on the show tonight. Do you have a set schedule for School of Scott, for Fantasy Football Daily, for Dynasty Life? And is Dynasty Life a year-round show with fantasy points?
I would wish it's kind of like when you're dealing with guests and all that sort of thing. It's not necessarily set. School of Scott
catering to them. Yeah.
School of Scott usually drops on Wednesdays. So if you subscribe to the podcast, you usually get that on a Wednesday. Fantasy Football Daily is oftentimes like that's dropping. We're dropping like 3 episodes a week, and Dynasty Life usually drops on the weekends. They're all on their own separate feeds. So some of the people who were following me at Player Profiler, you get like all my podcasts on one feed. Fantasy Points, we sort of chop it up. And then the Fantasy Points YouTube, a lot of my stuff has been dropping over there as well. So really appreciate people subscribing to the pods, to the individual feeds. And for like the high stakes drafters, like that's sort of how I got my start. It was a lot of high stakes content. I'm in these big drafts. I'm in Vegas. So a big shout out to the high stakes audience. That was always sort of like my goal was to cater all my content to like the high stakes crowd. And it just sort of expanded into traditional home league players. So, but when it comes down to it, big shout out to the players with a lot of skin in the game, taking big chances in drafts like this. And I think there's a lot of stuff we have over at Fantasy Points that can help these drafters. We have a lot of FFPC content, FFPC projections. All the data at Fantasy Points is second to none. I'll take it over any of the other data sites out there. It's absolutely fantastic. So I hope to see a lot of you guys checking out our content this year.
Yeah, I think Fantasy Points is, we've known this since the start. And the crew that you got there too, Theo, not only you, but Joe Dolan and John Hansen and Scott Barrett, obviously. We talked about Chris Weck, Ryan Heath. Ryan Heath, thank you. Ryan Heath, who is the guru as far as like projections. I should say the guru because John Hansen's there as well. But it's an all-star team. It's a really, really well put together, easy to navigate website. And you guys are doing a great job there. You just did a great job here in the 16th round. Woody Marks to back up Joe Mixon, my friend.
A little bit of stack cuffing that one. And then I'm going to dedicate this next pick to Dave Terpoilli right here. I'm going to get some correlation. I'm going to force the correlation in there. I'm going to get
Love
Terrence
it.
Ferguson. So now I'm not dead in the correlation department with
You're
Ferguson.
not dead. You can always double tap Tyler Higbee if you want to get crazy, or Tutu Atwell.
I could go nuts and really, really, really lean into it. So yeah, I like the Woody Marks pick, but I think Woody Marks is good, and he also catches a lot of passes. So this is a little bit of a handcuff, or if you want to shout out to Billy Muzio and Dave Hubbard, stack cuff.
Stack cuff, exactly, for best ball for sure.
Team 11 is dancing with the devil.
Okay,
like, so just Mahomes, no other quarterback.
Yeah. So that's
naked Mahomes.
That's Daniel Osorio's team. Daniel Osorio, a longtime FFPC main event veteran.
100%.
He's done very, very well. But yeah, dancing with the devil, I think, is putting it lightly. We have 27 quarterbacks off the board, and he's got one of those 27. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Theo, when you look at that, as Terp has pointed out, is there an edge to be gained by taking a chance on quarterback here at this point in the draft, where maybe you're like, okay, I'll just get the scraps and the leftovers, but all these other positions I pounded. I have 4 tight ends on this team. I'm pretty deep at receiver and running back here. Is there an edge to be gained in a format like this where you do take a chance at quarterback like this?
Well, like you said, it's a badged FFPC player who probably does a bunch of these, and he probably said to himself, you know what, you guys can have the quarterbacks. This is going to be my single QB build. Potentially, does he add Patrick Mahomes like a backup? I don't know. Like, I don't love it, Terp, but I think that if you're having a bunch of tickets into this type of a
it's not
tournament,
even just Patrick Mahomes, it's naked Patrick Mahomes.
Naked Patrick.
You know,
I'm saying naked Patrick
Mahomes. If you're betting on Patrick Mahomes, you would think you would have Hollywood Brown at the very least, maybe. Some part of that offense to go with it. It's just,
yeah, I didn't notice that one.
I get the thought process, but no Xavier Worthy, no Rashee Rice. You know, you're clearly making the bet on Patrick Mahomes, but you're betting on him by himself. Like, I don't see how it gets you to that ceiling that you need to get to win these things.
Yeah, if you would have just gone with Worthy instead of McLaurin there, this team would have looked
would have been
better.
way different. You know, I still wouldn't personally do it, but it would be way different because you're making that bet on, you know, Worthy having that Super Bowl, you know, that he had against the Eagles, no matter when. And then Mahomes having, you know, a career year and getting back to the Patrick Mahomes that we all love in fantasy football. But just taking him by himself, I don't know, it's not for me.
Theo,
can I be done at running back here is my question here, Terp. I think
Mixon, Caleb Johnson, Scattaboo, Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, Woody Marks.
I think you probably need one more, but the room got to be ugly.
It's super, super, super ugly. There's a couple names I have in my queue. Yeah, it's super ugly, Terp.
Yeah, but Theo, when you talk about ugly names at running back, I mean, like those a lot of times those ugly names can end up fairly pretty by the end of the season, and I don't think you can say that about wide receiver, and I definitely can't say it about quarterback, and you definitely can't say it about tight end. So I think if you were to add one more running back on here, it might not look great for June 5th, but it might look really good December 5th.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much done at tight end. There's no reason to force another tight end here.
Nope.
Wide receiver, I'm pretty strong at, considering that one of my tight ends is going to be in the flex spot pretty much every week.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be quarterback, running back here, Terp. And
there's a really nice quarterback out there.
There's an interesting.
Whether he makes it or not, it's a different story. It makes sense for the build and, you know, some other things that, you know, pop up, but
let's put a pin in the quarterback conversation. I'm going to scroll down here. I'm sorry, guys.
You're fine.
I'm slacking on this.
You won't tell anybody.
But thank you, Terp. I appreciate that. That's why we keep you around. No, we have
never mind. There goes
that's who I thought you were talking about. As soon
that's who I was thinking of, and I was keeping it in the back of my mind, double tapping both of them, Terp, even with the discount injury, and going with the double tap of the Indianapolis quarterback room. So,
because at the end of the day, if the Richardson injury is not a serious injury, which we kind of don't know right now. I mean, it just came out today, and they said he might be back sometime in training camp. So that's obviously a worry that it could be just like a season wash type of thing. But you still can paint the picture of Anthony Richardson still getting a chance because Daniel Jones is not good. So
Sean Green was already commenting on this. He was the one who said dimes to downs earlier, which would have made a lot
Super
of
Bowl $300,000 connection.
Could have been your team name for this, Theo, but that is all for naught. I wanted to ask you this after the Ferguson pick at 1702. Had you not drafted Matthew Stafford at 1502, would Ferguson have been the pick there, knowing you already had Bowers and Kittle?
I think Ferguson's still an interesting upside tight end pick for late in drafts, regardless of who you have at your quarterback. But certainly, I pushed him up a little bit when I made the Stafford selection. So, yeah, I think that he's very, very talented, and they really like him as a team. They said they would have considered taking him inside of the first round. So, I'm one pick away though here, guys. I'm kind of
you're on
the next pick should be very easy for you. It's not pretty.
Well, hold on, Theo. Do you see that the same way? Is this next pick easy?
Is the next pick Anthony Richardson here, Terp? Is that what you're implying?
No. Mm-hmm. Unless I missed the player being drafted. No, it's the same position though.
31 quarterbacks off the board right now.
Is this?
It's an ugly situation, but it's a clear-cut starter.
You're talking about Tyler Shuck?
Malik Willis.
He's talking Tyler Shuck here. I think I could push Tyler Shuck around here, Terp.
You probably could. I don't think Team 1's taking him, but
I think for me, this pick is probably Estime as a running back. I think
that's one of the running backs that I had in mind.
Yeah, so I'm going to go.
If Dobbins doesn't come to town, it makes too much sense.
I like Estime here. And then I also think that I could lean into a little bit of Indianapolis correlation. I kind of like Adonai Mitchell a little bit here. There's also Dontavian Wicks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of ways I could go here. I think Estime, because he's the last draftable.
Makes a ton of sense. I don't like the player. I think he's a stiff. I said it last year.
I'm going to take Estime.
I think he's very good, but it makes the 19th round coming around. The Wicks with Love, and if he just hits your lineup a couple times, it's a win.
Yeah, I think I lean into Wicks, and then if a quarterback's there in round 20, I can lean into it.
Yeah.
It's ugly. I mean, the quarterback situation is really ugly. I don't know if I think I become a 2 quarterback build here, Terp.
I think you got to take a third one. I think
that's so fascinating. We were just talking about whether this would be a 4 quarterback build, and now we're like,
I don't think you could do. I'm not saying they're not ugly, but I think that at this point, I mean, there's really nobody left you could pair with the Saints guy, but
I think Anthony Richardson's interesting though, because
he is interesting. He is, but you also could have a dead roster spot in
just real quick before you make this pick. Sean Green posting on YouTube, Browns quarterback can't leave without one. Is there something in there with the Browns quarterback? Whoever
that's also a fair thing. I don't. If you,
but there's still a lack of clarity here.
Totally.
Yeah,
I think the clarity's in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think it's probably Shuck. And Michael Swecker is probably correct in the chat too. I mean, Estime, the fact they're bringing in Dobbins, I don't think it's a great pick. But Estime has a little bit of juice.
But if they don't bring in Dobbins, he has a role. Right.
It's 18th round and
with an unknown rookie. So
19th round. I'm going to take Tyler Shuck.
There you go. So the Oyster Man goes at 1902 to Theo Gremminger's team, joining Matthew Stafford and Jordan Love. I mean, for waiting till the second half of the draft, Theo, to take any quarterbacks and ending with Love, Stafford, and Shuck, I think you could have done worse.
I don't know. It's pretty low level quarterback room here.
We've had worse. I remember the one year we didn't take anybody to like round 15.
I know that
one of them was Baker Mayfield, so it worked out. So.
Well, I used to draft a lot with Billy Muzio, and he was notorious. And him and Dave, when they were splitting
teams, they love getting ugly in those streets. I can't.
Shout out to Dave Hubbard. I'm not sure if you're going to listen to this one, Dave.
His drafts last year, I remember some where he didn't pick anybody till like the 16th, 17th round.
Yeah,
that's too crazy for me.
Would do that. It was like it would be like playing Russian roulette at the quarterback position.
Right. Yeah. There was one draft when I was drafting in Louisville at the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. This was probably 6-7 years ago. And this is back when I was in like my total, I am not taking a quarterback until I absolutely have to phase. And I don't do that anymore. But it got to be like round 17. And my buddy Jim Cole pointed out, he's like, Balky, you don't have a quarterback yet. And I'm like, oh, I don't have a quarterback yet. And then I pounded Stafford and somebody else super late. It ended up being okay, but it was not ideal. So, but that's what happens when you draft in Louisville and the bourbon is flowing and you're not paying attention to your quarterback.
Bourbon hits different, man.
Bourbon hits different in Kentucky. It definitely does.
It does.
So let's look at this, guys, here. You are coming up, Theo. One final pick to go. You're good on tight end. I can't imagine you're going for a fourth quarterback here. You have plenty of running back depth, plenty of receiver depth. This is kind of like a wild card pick for you. It's kind of like, hey, whatever the board shows me, you don't have to tell me who is in it, but how many players are in your queue right now?
I have 5 players in my queue, and most of them are wide receivers.
Okay.
One of them makes a ton of sense that you were possibly going to take in round 19.
Theo,
I think we'll come back to you.
Smith and Jigba, Travis Hunter, Jawan Jennings, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs, Trey Harris. And those are is that 6 receivers? Yeah, 6 receivers here, 20-round draft. So yeah, it makes sense that you would be going wide receiver here late. Theo, is there an art to drafting 19th and 20th round receivers here? What's the kind of the archetype that you're looking for late round wide receivers in a best ball tournament?
Usually there's some correlation with these picks where I'm trying to cram in a little bit of correlation. And you also don't want to necessarily have dead picks. I think that's one thing where you guys have often talked about when you're covering like the pros versus Joes type drafts is a lot of people will just swing for the fences here, where if you can just take a guy that you know is going to give you a couple of weeks, that's usually sort of a better pick. Sort of like the argument for the Darius Slayton drafter in previous years, Terp, where you get access to that sort of player in this range of the draft where you know
he's going to hit your laps a couple of weeks. It's not, you're not expecting anything crazy, but he's not going to be a 0 all season too.
Exactly. So you don't want to take zeros here, like taking that undrafted free agent who's super fast and has some positive reports in camp. That sort of like player can be a dead pick in this range of the draft. So you want to have usable weeks. You've heard like Justin Herzig and really smart underdog drafters talk about this theory-wise, just not burning those last few picks. But yeah, if I'm going to cram one in, it's going to be correlation. And a couple of the players in my queue are correlation plays.
So as we wrap up this draft here tonight, Theo, I'm not going to ask you to offer a grade on your team, but based on what you thought you could have accomplished tonight, based on what you did accomplish, how well do you think you did to grade yourself, to give yourself a rating here tonight from the 2 spot? How do you feel about this team?
Oh, this team is definitely not going to be one of my best teams I've drafted. I'll say B-, nothing more than that. And maybe even a C+ because I missed out on I should have dove into the quarterback run and not try to zig a little bit. So I'd say, somewhere in that B-, C+. Structurally, I still have some interesting things I did. I have a couple outs. I like the Kittle-Bowers combination. I like Travis Hunter pick. I like the double tapping the Houston running back pick. And I like getting the Jaden Reed, Jordan Love correlations. I mean, maybe a B- here. It's not the worst team that I've ever drafted. But again, sometimes Terps, those teams that you're not that happy about end up doing better just because of the structure.
Absolutely.
Terp, you've done this before. We've done this before. We're like,
there we go.
I know
there's
been plenty of teams where I've drafted and I'm like, this team is awful. And then that's the team I'm rooting for come December. It just is what it is.
I drafted 10 now called Gorilla teams last year. And I did one on the stream with Aiden. I remember the draft like it was yesterday. Every pick like fell right to me. I thought it was the greatest draft in the world.
And it was
like the playoffs in 9 out of the 10 leagues.
And that was the one that
didn't make the playoff. I did not make it.
Terp, we'll talk this one out together for the listeners. It's Anthony Richardson. It's Adonai Mitchell. It's Tutu Atwell. And then taking a shot on a New Orleans Saint wide receiver, a Bub Means or a Brandon Cooks.
To me, it would be Bub Means or Atwell. I feel like...
I think it's Atwell. I think
Atwell makes a ton of sense with Stafford. I mean, if something happens to one of those guys...
And they just paid him. They just paid him $10 million, didn't they?
He's clearly the third guy there.
Yeah, he's the third guy there, and he's fast.
It makes a ton of sense. I like. There's a little hype on Means early in camp. but there's so much unknown with that team right now. The only reason you would take him is because, like you just said it 2 minutes ago, it could be a total zero all season. Atwell will hit your lineup probably at least twice. It might not be what you want him to hit, but he's not going to put up zeros all week.
Yeah, so I get the Ferguson, Atwell, Stafford backdoor
it just
stack
worked out.
there for
sometimes it just works out. There's no Puka or Devontae or Kyron in there, but it could have been worse. You could have took Tyler Higbee.
Naked Tyler Shuck there. That's how we end the draft.
That's your team name right there.
Would I have liked this team better if I would have passed on Tyler Shuck and taken Dontavious Wicks there and then just taken Anthony Richardson when nobody wanted him and hope that he's not hurt? Like,
I say no.
I'm not sure.
The Anthony Richardson thing is a wild card because it literally came out that day. They said, like, I don't know.
It doesn't sound good. It sounds really, it sounds
really bad. And a guy that's been injured in the past who's missed a ton of games. We all know the explosive upside. We've seen it in a short dose, but it's hard to take in a guerrilla league or in a main event. You could waste a 20th round pick because it doesn't. You can cut him here. If he's out for the season, you draft him today, then you're sitting with just Stafford and Love. I'm not saying Tyler Shuck's a superstar, but at least gives you an ability to get a guy that's going to hit your lineup.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020. I would have done Shuck here 9 times out of 10 for sure. Theo, this was so much fun. Terp, this is so much fun. Theo, for anybody who missed it tonight, at the OG Fantasy on X, fantasypoints.com. Dynasty Life, the podcast, the
Fantasy Football Daily
That's podcast, School of Scott.
I do keep track.
Scott Parrott as well, and I'm sure you'll add another 15 podcasts onto your resume before the.
No, I'm tapped out this year. This is
that's what you say now. We'll see what happens. So much fun tonight. Fantasypoints.com is where we'll continue to follow you.
Shout out your guest for next week.
So next week, from 7 to 9, we have superstar Joe Dolan coming on, SiriusXM Fantasy and FantasyPoints.com CEO and owner is going to be coming on, editor-in-chief, for Fantasy Points. Joe Dolan is going to be joining me next week for 2 full hours. That's going to be a lot of fun. Dave Terpoilli will continue to watch you on the FFPC
every Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Me and Aiden will. Next week we have a Beeb on. We have some real good guests coming up. We're getting the July schedule out there. Theo, make sure you leave one open for us.
When are we splitting one, Terp? When are we splitting the team?
Usually I'm a little later in the game when it comes to the best ball splits. I think a little early is
when you guys split one. Let me know because we can definitely cover.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Probably a little later in the season, maybe like in July sometime. We'll figure it out.
Sounds good to me, guys.
The FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, the FFPC Main Event, the Best Ball and Superflex Tournaments, all on at myffpc.com, including Dynasty Startups at myffpc.com. Before we go tonight, and I know we're going a little bit long, and I didn't tell you guys we're going to do this, but something I found out during the show tonight, which really caught me off guard. Anthony Servino from rotowire.com, a guy who co-hosted this show with me less than 10 months ago, passed away yesterday, which was it's shocking and it's awful. I'm just kind of at a loss for words. I'm just going to read what RotoWire had to say about him. We are heartbroken by the passing of Anthony Servino, known to many as at the real NFL guru. Anthony was a passionate fantasy football voice and a friend to so many in the community, brought energy and authenticity to everything he did. More than a creator, he was a devoted husband, loving father, and true supporter of this space. Our thoughts are with his loved ones, especially his wife and son during this incredibly difficult time. Please consider donating to Anthony's family's GoFundMe. And if you want to find that, go to x.com/rotowire. It is a pinned tweet on there. You can click on there and donate. Anthony Servino, just like I said, just did a show with him less than 10 months ago, and he's gone. So hug your loved ones, hug your family, tell them you love them, because you never know when your time's up. And Anthony Servino, rest in peace to you, my friend. Truly an awesome guy in the industry. It seemed like yesterday I was just watching him and Jim Coventry in their.
Yeah, I just had Jim on, and Anthony was always like a super positive dude. Always would interact in a positive way. It's terrible. It's awful.
Yeah, and you can help out the situation. The GoFundMe is at RotoWire, x.com/RotoWire. I hate to end on this note, but RIP Anthony Servino. Let's celebrate him and do really good work this year in honor of him. For Dave Terpoilli, for Theo Gremminger, I have been Eric Balkman. This is FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. Shout out to our producer, Matt Deutsch. We'll be back at 7 o'clock next Thursday.